Chapter 76, Buddha's Inner Orgasm. The first question, when we have always heard that Tantra is basically concerned with sex energy and sex-center techniques, but you say that Tantra is all-inclusive. If there is any truth in the former standpoint, the majority of techniques in Vijnana Bhairava seem to be non-tantric. Is this true? The first thing is to understand sex energy. As you understand it, it is just a part, one fragment of the life force, but as Tantra understands it, it is just synonymous with life. It is not a part, not a fragment, it is life itself. So when Tantra says sex energy, it means life energy. The same is true about Freudian concepts of sex energy. Freud was also very much misunderstood in the West. It appeared to people that he was reducing life to sex, but he was doing the same thing that Tantra has been doing for so long. Life is sex. The word sex is not confined to reproduction. The whole play of life energy is sex. Reproduction is just a part of that play. Wherever two energies are meeting, negative and positive sex has entered. It is difficult to understand. For example, you are listening to me. If you ask Freud, or if you ask Tantra masters, they would say that listening is passive, feminine, and speaking is male. Speaking is a penetration of you and you are receptive to it. Between a speaker and a listener, a sex act is happening because the speaker is trying to penetrate you, and the listener is receiving. The energy in the listener has become feminine, and if the listener has not become feminine, there will be no phenomenon of listening. That is why the listener has to be totally passive. He should not think while listening because thinking will make him active. He should not go on arguing between argument will make him active. While listening, he should be simply listening, not doing anything else. Only then can the message penetrate and become illumined. But then the listener has become feminine. Communication happens only when one party has become male and the other party has become female, otherwise there can be no communication. Wherever negative and positive meet, sex has happened. It may be on the physical plane positive and negative electricity meet, and sex has happened. Wherever polarities meet, opposites meet, it is sex. So sex is a very wide, a very spacious term. It is not concerned only with reproduction. Reproduction is only one type of phenomenon which is included in sex. Tantra says that when the ultimate bliss and ecstasy comes inside you, it means your own positive and negative pole have come to a meeting, because every man is both man and woman, and every woman is both man and woman. You are born not only from woman or from man, you are born out of a meeting of the opposites. Your father has contributed, your mother has contributed. You are half your mother and half your father, and they both coexist within you. When they meet within, ecstasy happens. Buddha sitting under his bodhi tree is in a deep inner orgasm. The inner forces have met, they have melted into each other. Now there will be no need to seek a woman outside because the meeting has happened with the inner woman. And Buddha is non-attached to or detached from woman outside, not because he is against woman, but because the ultimate phenomenon has happened within. Now there is no need. An inner circle has become whole, now it is complete. That is why such grace comes to Buddha's face. It is the grace of being complete. Now nothing is lacking, a deep fulfillment has happened. Now there is no further journey. He has achieved the ultimate destiny. The inner forces have come to a meeting and now there is no conflict. But it is a sexual phenomenon. Meditation is a sexual phenomenon. That is why Tantra is said to be sex-based, sex-oriented, and all these 112 techniques are sexual. Really, no meditative technique can be non-sexual. But you have to understand the wideness of the term sex. If you don't understand, you will be confused, and misunderstanding will follow. So, whenever Tantra says sex energy, it means the elan vital, the life energy itself. They are synonymous. Whatsoever we call sex is just one dimension of life energy. There are other dimensions, and really it should be so. You see a seed sprouting, somewhere flowers are coming on a tree, the birds are singing, the whole phenomenon is sexual. It is life manifesting itself in many ways. When the bird is singing, it is a sexual call, an invitation. When the flower is attracting butterflies and bees, it is an invitation, because the bees and butterflies will carry the seeds of reproduction. Stars are moving in space. No one has yet worked on it, but it is one of the oldest Tantra concepts that there are male planets and female planets, otherwise there would be no movement. It must be so because the polarity is needed, the opposite is needed to create magnetism, to create attraction. Planets must be male and female. Everything must be divided into these two polarities, and life is a rhythm between these two opposites, repulsion and attraction, coming nearer and going far. These are the rhythms. Tantra uses the word sex wherever the opposites meet. It is a sexual phenomenon, and how to make your inner opposites meet is the whole purpose of meditation. So all these 112 methods are sexual. There cannot be anything else. There is no possibility. But try to understand the wideness of the term sex. The second question, question 2, you said that existence is a wholeness, that everything is related, that things are melting into each other, that the tree cannot be without the sun, and the sun also cannot exist without the tree. In reference to the above, please explain how ignorance and enlightenment are related to each other. They are related. Enlightenment and ignorance are two polar opposites. Enlightenment can exist only because there is ignorance. If ignorance disappeared from the world, enlightenment would disappear simultaneously. But because of our dualistic thinking, we always think that opposites are opposites. They are complementary. They are not really opposite. They are complementary because one cannot exist without the other. So they are not enemies. Birth and death are not enemies because death cannot exist if there is no birth. Birth creates the base for death to exist, but if there were no death, birth could not exist. Death creates the base, so whenever someone is dying, someone else is being born. At one point there is death, at the next point immediately there is birth. They look opposite, they work in opposition as far as the surface is concerned, but deep down they are friends helping each other. It is easy to understand about ignorance and enlightenment because we think that when a man becomes enlightened, ignorance has disappeared completely. This is the ordinary standpoint about enlightenment, that ignorance has disappeared completely. No, that is not right. Rather, on the contrary, when a person becomes enlightened, enlightenment and ignorance have both disappeared. Because if one is there, the other is bound to be there. One cannot exist without the other. They exist together or they disappear together. They are aspects of one thing, two faces of one coin. You cannot make one face of the coin disappear and retain the other. So when a person becomes a Buddha, really, at that moment both have disappeared, ignorance and enlightenment both. Just consciousness is left, pure being is left, and the conflicting, opposing, helping opposites have disappeared. That is why when Buddha is asked what happens to an enlightened man, he remains silent many times. He says, "Don't ask this because whatsoever I say will be untrue. Whatsoever I say will be untrue." If I say that he has become silent, it means the opposite of silence must exist there, otherwise how can you feel silence? If I say he has become blissful, then anguish must exist side by side. How can you feel bliss without anguish? Buddha says, "Whatsoever I say will be untrue." So he remains consistently silent about the state of an enlightened person because all our terms are dual. If you say light, and if someone insists, define it, how are you going to define it? You will have to bring darkness in, only then can you define it. You will say that light is where darkness is not, or something like that. One of the greatest thinkers of the world, Voltaire, used to say that you can communicate only if you define your terms first. But that is impossible. If you have to define light, you will have to bring darkness in. And then, if it is asked what darkness is, you will have to define it by light, which is undefined. All definitions are circular. They used to say, "What is mind?" And the definition was, not matter. And what is matter? And the definition was, not mind. Both terms are undefined and you are playing a trick with yourself. You define one term by another term which itself needs definition. The whole language is circular and the opposite is necessary. So Buddha says, I will not even say that the enlightened person exists, because existence is possible only if non-existence is also present. So he will not even say that you exist after enlightenment, because existence has to be defined by non-existence. Nothing can be said then, because all language consists of the polar opposite. That is why in the Upanishads, it is said that if someone says that he is enlightened, know well that he is not. Because how can he feel that he is enlightened? Some ignorance must have remained because a contrast is needed. If you write on a blackboard with white chalk, the blacker the board, the whiter will be the writing. You cannot write on a white board with white chalk. If you do, there will be no writing. The contrast is needed. If you feel that you are enlightened, that shows that the blackboard is right there, only then could you feel it. If the blackboard has really disappeared, the writing would have also disappeared. It happens simultaneously. So a Buddha is neither ignorant nor wise, he simply is. You cannot put him on any pole of any duality. Both the poles have disappeared. When they disappear, how does it happen? When both poles meet, they negate each other and disappear. In another way, you can say Buddha is both the most ignorant person and the most enlightened. The polarity has come to its extreme point. There has been a meeting, and the meeting has cancelled both. The minus and plus have come together. Now there is neither minus nor plus, because they cancel each other. The minus has cancelled the plus, and the plus has cancelled the minus. They have both disappeared, and a pure being, an innocent being, is left. You cannot say it is wise, you cannot say it is ignorant, or you can say it is both. Enlightenment means the point from where you take a jump into the non-dual. Before that point is duality. Everything is divided. Someone asked Buddha, "Who are you?" He laughed and said, "It is difficult to say." But the man insisted. He said, "Something can be said because you are. Something meaningful can be asserted because you are." But Buddha said, "Nothing can be said. I am, but even to say this leads me into untruth." Then the man took another route. He asked, "Are you a man or a woman?" Buddha said, "It is difficult to say. Once I was a man, but then my whole being was attracted towards women. When I was a man, my mind was filled with women, and when women disappeared from my mind, my man also disappeared with them. Now I cannot say. I don't know who I am, and it is difficult to define. When duality is no more, nothing can be defined. So if you are aware that you have become wise, it means that foolishness persists. If you think that you have become blissful, it means that you are still in the world, in the realm of anguish. If you say that you feel a very deep well-being, a health, that means that disease is still possible. The opposite will follow you. If you carry one, the other will follow. You have to drop both. And the dropping happens when both meet. So the basic science of all religion is how to allow your inner opposites to meet so that they disappear and not a trace is left. You will disappear with the disappearance of the opposite. You as you are will no longer be there, and something totally new and unknown, something unimaginable, will come into being. That something is called Brahma, you can call it God. Buddha prefers the term nirvana. The word nirvana simply means cessation of all that was, total cessation of the past, and you cannot use your past experience and knowledge to define this new. This new is indefinable. Ignorance and enlightenment are also part of duality. For us, Buddha looks enlightened because we are in ignorance. For Buddha himself, he is neither. It is impossible for him to think in terms of duality. The third question, question 3, will you please tell us why Krishnamurti is against techniques, whereas Shiva is for so many techniques? Being against techniques is simply a technique. Not only Krishnamurti is using that technique, it has been used many times before. It is one of the oldest techniques, nothing is new about it. 2,000 years ago, Bodhidharma used it. He introduced into China what is now known as Chan or Zen Buddhism. He was a Hindu monk, a monk from India. He believed in no technique. Zen is based on no technique. Zen masters say that if you do something you will miss, because who will do you? You are the disease, and out of you nothing else can be born. Who will make the effort? Your mind, and your mind has to be destroyed, and you cannot destroy the mind itself with help from the mind. Whatsoever you do, your mind will be more strengthened. So Zen says there is no technique, no method, there is no scripture, and there can be no guru. But the beauty is that Zen has created the greatest of gurus, and Zen masters have written the best scriptures in the world. And through Zen, thousands and thousands of people attained nirvana, but they say there is no technique. So it has to be understood that no technique is really one of the foundational techniques. The emphasis is on no, so that your mind is negated. Mind can have two attitudes, yes or no. These are the two possibilities, the two alternatives, just as they are in everything. No is the feminine and yes is the male. So you can use the method of no, or you can use the method of yes. If you follow the method of yes, then there are many methods, but you have to say yes, and there can be many yeses. If you follow no, then there are not many methods, only one, because there cannot be many no's. Look at this point, there are so many religions in the world, so many types of theists. There are at least 300 religions in existence right now. So theism has 300 temples, churches, scriptures. But there is only one type of atheism. There cannot be two. Atheists have no sex. When you say there is no God, the thing is finished. You cannot differentiate between two no's. You cannot make any difference. But when you say, yes, there is God, then there is a possibility of difference. Because my yes will create my own God and your yes will create your own God. Your yes may be said to Jesus, my yes may be said to Krishna, but when you say no, then all no's are similar. That is why on the earth there are no sects in atheism. Atheists are all alike. They don't have any scripture, they don't have any church. When they don't have any positive attitude, there is nothing to differ about. A simple no is enough. The same has happened about techniques. No has only one technique. Yes has 112, or many more even are possible. You can create new combinations. Someone has said that the method I teach, the dynamic method of meditation, is not included in these 112 methods. It is not included because it is a new combination, but all that is in it is there in the 112 methods. Some parts are in one technique, some other part is in some other technique. These 112 are the basic methods. You can create thousands out of them. There is no end to it. Any number of combinations is possible. But those who there is no method can have only one method. You cannot create much out of no. So Bodhidharma, Lin Kai, Bokuju, Krishnamurti have only one method. Really, Krishnamurti comes just after a succession of Zen masters. He is talking Zen. Nothing is new about it. But Zen always looks new, and the reason is because Zen doesn't believe in scriptures, doesn't believe in tradition, doesn't believe in techniques. So whenever no arises again, it is fresh and new. Yes believes in tradition, in scriptures, in masters. Whenever yes is there, it will have a long beginningless tradition. Those who have said yes, Krishna or Mahavir, they go on saying that they are not saying anything new. Mahavir says, before me 23 Tirthankaras have taught the same. And Krishna says, before me, this seer gave this message to that seer gave the message to that, and it has been coming down. I am not saying anything new. Yes will always be old, eternal. No will always look new, as if it has suddenly come into being. No cannot have traditional roots. It is unrooted. That is why Krishnamurti looks new. He is not. What is this technique of denying technique? It can be used. It is one of the subtlest ways to kill and destroy the mind. Mind tries to cling to something that is a support. Mind needs support to be there. It cannot exist in a vacuum. So it creates many types of supports: churches, scriptures, Bible, Quran, Gita. Then it is happy. There is something to cling to. But then with this clinging the mind remains. This technique of no technique insists on destroying all supports. So it will insist that there is no scripture. No Bible can be of help because the Bible is nothing but words. No Gita can be of any help because whatsoever you come to know through Gita will be borrowed, and truth cannot be borrowed. No tradition is of any help because truth has to be achieved authentically, individually. You have to come to it, it cannot be transferred to you. No master can give it to you because it is not something like property. It is not transferable, it cannot be taught because it is not information. If a master teaches you, you can learn only words, concepts, doctrines. No master can make you a realized one. That realization has to happen to you, and it has to happen without any help. If it happens through some help, then it is dependent, and then it cannot lead you to ultimate freedom, to moksha. These are the parts of this no technique. Through these criticisms, negations, and arguments, supports are destroyed. Then you are left alone with no guru. No scripture, no tradition, no church, nowhere to move, nowhere to go, nowhere to be dependent. You are left in a vacuum. And really, if you can conceive of this vacuum and are ready to be in it, you will be transformed. But mind is very cunning. If Krishnamurti says to you that these are things no support, no clinging, no master, no scripture, no technique, you will cling to Krishnamurti. There are many clinging to him. The mind has again created a support, and then the whole point is lost. Many people come to me and they say, our minds are in anguish. How to come to the inner peace, how to attain the inner silence. And if I give them some technique, they say, but techniques cannot help because we have been listening to Krishnamurti. Then I ask them, then why have you come to me? And what do you mean when you ask, how to attain silence? You are asking for a technique and you are still going to listen to Krishnamurti. Why? If there is no master, and if the real cannot be taught, then why are you going on listening to him? He cannot teach you anything, but you go on listening to him and you are being aught, and you have now started to cling to this no technique. So whenever someone gives you technique, you will say, "No, we don't believe in techniques," and you are still not silent. So what has happened? Where have you missed the train? If you really need no technique, if you don't have any technique, you must have attained. But you have not attained. The basic point has been missed. The basic point is that for this no technique to work, you must destroy all support, you must not cling to anything, and it is very arduous. It is almost impossible. That is why so many people for these last 40 years have been listening to Krishnamurti, but nothing has happened to them. It is so arduous and difficult, almost impossible to remain unsupported, to remain totally alone, and to be alert that the mind is not allowed to create any support. Because mind is very cunning, it can create subtle supports again and again. You may throw away Gita, but then you fill the space with Krishnamurti's books. You may laugh at Mohammed, you may laugh at Mahavir, but if someone laughs at Krishnamurti, you get angry. Again, in a roundabout way, you have created a support, you are clinging. Non-clinging is the secret of this method. If you can do it, it is good. If you cannot do it, then don't deceive. Then there are methods, use them. Then be clear that you cannot be alone, so you will take someone's help. Help is possible, through help also, transformation is possible. These are the opposites, no and yes, these are opposites. You can move from either, but you must decide about your own mind and its working. If you feel that you can be alone. Once it happened that, when I was staying in a village, a man came and he said to me, "I am confused. My family is trying to arrange a marriage for me." He was a young man, just fresh from university. He said, "I don't want to be involved in all that. I want to become a sannyasin, I want to renounce all. So what is your advice?" I told him, "I never went to ask anybody, but you have come to take my advice. When you have come to take advice, it shows that you need support, that you need. It will be difficult for you to live without a wife. That too is a support. You cannot live without a wife. You cannot live without your husband, but you think you can live without a guru. Impossible. Your mind needs support in every way. Why do you go to Krishnamurti? You go to learn, you go to be taught, you go to borrow knowledge, otherwise there is no need. Many times it has happened that friends will say, "It would be good if you and Krishnamurti meet." So I tell them, "You go and ask Krishnamurti, and if he wants to meet, I will come. But what is going to be there? What will we do? What will we talk about? We can remain silent. What is the need?" But they say, "It would be good if you both meet, it would be good for us. We will be happy to listen to what you say." So I tell them a story. Once it happened that a Mohammedan mystic, Farid, was traveling. When they came near the village of Kabir, another mystic, the followers of Farid said that it would be very good if they both meet. And when it became known to Kabir's disciples, they also insisted that, as Farid was passing, they should invite him in. So Kabir said, "It is okay." Farid also said, "It is okay. We will go, but don't say anything when I enter Kabir's hut, remain quite silent." For 2 days Farid stayed in Kabir's hut. There was total silence. They sat silently for 2 days, and then Kabir came to the edge of his village to give a send-off to Farid, and in silence they departed. The moment they departed, the followers of both started asking. The followers of Kabir asked him, "What was this?" It became a boredom. You were sitting silently for 2 days, not even a single word was spoken, and we were so eager to hear. Farid's followers also said, "What was this? It seems weird." For 2 days continuously we were watching and waiting for something to come out of this meeting. But nothing came out. Farid is reported to have said, "What do you mean? 2 persons who know cannot talk. 2 persons who don't know can talk much, but it is useless, even harmful. The only possibility is 1 person who knows, talking to one who doesn't know." And Kabir said, "Whoever uttered a single word would have proved that he didn't know." You go on asking for advice, you go on searching for supports. Realize it will that if you cannot remain without support, then it is good to find a support, a guide, knowingly. If you think that there is no need, that you are enough unto yourself, then stop seeking Krishnamurti or anybody. Stop going and remain alone. It has happened also to persons who were alone, but the phenomenon is very rare. Sometimes to 1 person in millions it happens, and that too is not without any cause. That person may have been seeking for many lives. He may have been finding many supports, many masters, many guides, and now a point has come where he can be alone. Only then it happens. But whenever it happens to a person, that he achieves the ultimate alone, he starts saying that it can happen to you also. It is natural. Because it happened to Krishnamurti alone, he goes on saying that it can happen to you. It cannot happen to you, you are in search of support, and that shows that alone you cannot do it. So don't be deceived by yourself. Your ego may feel good that, I don't need any support. Ego always thinks in terms of, I alone am enough, but that ego will not help. That will become the greatest barrier possible. No technique is a technique, but only for very specific people. For those who have struggled in many lives and have now come to a point where they can be alone, that technique is a help. And if you are that type of person, I know well you will not be here, so I am not worried about that person. He will not be here. He cannot be here. Not only here, he cannot be anywhere with any master, listening, seeking, searching, practicing. He will not be found anywhere, so we can leave him, we need not discuss him. These techniques are for you. So this is how I will conclude. Krishnamurti is talking for the person who cannot be there, and I am talking for persons who are here. Whatsoever Krishnamurti is saying is absolutely right, but the persons to whom he is saying it are absolutely wrong. The person who can be alone, who without any method, any support, any scripture, any guru can reach, is not going to listen to Krishnamurti because there is no need, there is no meaning. And those who are going to listen, they are not of that type. They will be in deep difficulty, and they are. They need support, and their mind goes on thinking that there is no need for support. They need a guru, and their mind goes on saying that the guru is a barrier. They need techniques, and logically, they have concluded that techniques cannot help. They are in deep trouble, but the trouble is created by themselves. Before you start doing something, you must try to understand what type of mind you have got, because ultimately the guru is not meaningful, ultimately our mind is meaningful. The ultimate decision is going to come through your mind. The destiny is to be fulfilled through your mind, so understand it, without any ego confusing you. Just understand if you need support, guidance, techniques, methods to work with. If you need them, find them. If you don't need them, there is no question be alone, unclinging, move alone, unclinging. The same will happen through both ways. Yes and no are two opposites, and you have to find out what your path is. The last question for you said that Shiva is not a system maker and sects cannot form around his teachings. But persons like Buddha, Mahavir, Jesus, Gurdjieff seem to be great system makers. Why do they have to be system makers? Please explain the pros and cons of system making. Are you a multi-system maker? There are two possibilities: you can create a system to help people, create multi-systems to help people, or the other, you can try to destroy systems to help people. Again the yes and no. Again the polar opposites. And in both ways you can help people. Bodhidharma is a system destroyer. Krishnamurti is a system destroyer. The whole tradition of Zen is system destroying. Mahavir, Mohammed, Jesus, Gurdjieff are great system makers. The problems is always that we cannot understand these two contradictory things simultaneously together. We think that either one can be right, but both cannot be. If system makers are right, then our mind says that system destroyers must be wrong. Or if the system destroyers are right, then system makers must be wrong. No, both are right. A system means a pattern to follow, a clear-cut map to follow so that no doubt arises, no indecisiveness arises, and you can follow with absolute faith. Remember this: a system is created to create faith, to create trust. If everything is clear, then there will be trust more easily. If all your questions are answered mathematically, then you will be in a state of no doubt, and you can proceed. So sometimes Mahavir answers your absurd questions also. They are futile questions, meaningless, but he will answer. And he will answer in such a way that it helps you to have trust, because that quality of trust is needed. When someone tries to penetrate into the unknown, a deep trust is needed, otherwise it will be impossible to move. It will be so dangerous you will get scared. It is dark, the path is not clear, everything is chaos, and every step leads you into more and more insecurity. Hence system making is needed so that everything is planned, you know everything about heaven and hell and the ultimate moksha, and from where you will move, from where you will pass. Every inch has been mapped. That gives you a security, a feeling that everything is okay. People have been there before, and you are not moving into a no man's land, you are not moving into the unknown. A system makes it appear as if it is known. That is to help you, just to give you support. And if you have faith, then you will have energy to move. If you are doubtful, you will dissipate energy and movement will be difficult. System makers have tried to answer all types of questions, and they have created a neat and clean map. With that map in your hand, you feel everything is okay, you can proceed. But I tell you, every system is just artificial. Every system is just to help you. It is not true. No system can be true. It is a device. But it helps because your whole personality is so untrue that even untrue devices help. You live in lies and you cannot understand truth. A system means less lies, and then even less lies, and then by and by, you will come nearer and nearer to the truth. When the truth is revealed to you, the system will become meaningless. It will simply drop. When Sariputta became enlightened, came to the ultimate goal, he looked back from that point and saw that the whole system had disappeared. Whatsoever he had been taught was not there. So he said to Buddha, "The whole system that was taught to me has disappeared." Buddha said to him, "Keep silent, don't tell the others. It has disappeared. It has to disappear because it was never there. It was a make-believe, but it helped you to come to this point. Don't tell those who have not come yet, because if they know that there is no knowledge where they are going to, they will drop. They cannot go into the unknown unguarded, alone they cannot go. It happens many times. It has been my own experience that people come to me and they say, now meditation is going deep, but we are scared. An ultimate feeling is bound to come when you feel a dying fear, as if death is approaching near. When meditation comes to its peak, it is death-like. I tell them, don't worry, I am with you. Then they feel okay. I cannot be there, impossible, no one can be there. This is untrue. No one can be there, you will be alone. That point is one of total aloneness. But when I say, I will be there, you don't worry, you go ahead, they feel okay and they move. If I say, you will be alone and no one is going to be there, they will step back. The point has come where fear is bound to be there. The abyss is there and they are going to fall, I must help them to fall. So I say that I am there, you just take the jump. And they take the jump. After the jump they will come to know that no one was there, but now the whole thing is finished, they cannot come back. This is a device. All systems are devices to help people who are full of doubts, to help people who have no trust, to help people who have no confidence, to help people to move into the unknown without fear. Systems are created. In those systems everything is just like a myth. That is why there are so many systems. Mahavir creates his own, that system is created according to the needs of his followers. So he creates a system. It is a myth, but very helpful because many moved through it and reached to the truth. And when they reached, they knew that the system was false, but it worked. Buddha defines truth as that which works. His definition of truth is that which works. If a lie can work, it is true, and if a truth cannot work, it is false. There are so many systems and every system helps, but every system cannot help everybody. That is why the old religions insisted that a person should not be converted into a new religion. Because although the mind can after a time be conditioned in a system and can be changed, deep down you will never change, and a new system will never become useful for you. A Hindu can become a Christian can become a Hindu, but after the age of 7, the mind is almost fixed, conditioned. So if a Hindu becomes a Christian, he will remain a Hindu deep down, and the Christian system will not help him, and he has lost contact with his own system, which might have worked. Hindus and Jews have always been against conversion. Not only against conversion, if someone wants to enter into their religion voluntarily, they will resist. They will say, no, follow your own path. Because a system is a great unconscious phenomenon. It has to be deep in the unconscious, only then can it help. Otherwise it cannot help, and it is an artificial thing. It is just like language. You can never speak any language as you speak your mother tongue. It is impossible. Nothing can be done about it. Howsoever efficient you become in somebody else's language, it will remain superficial. Deep down your mother tongue will continue to influence it. Your dreams will be in your mother tongue. The unconscious will function with the original language. Anything can be imposed on and above it, but it cannot be replaced. Religious systems are like language, they are language. But if they penetrate deep, they help because you feel confident. The system is irrelevant, but the confidence is relevant. You feel trusting, so you move with a sure step, you know where you are moving. And this knowing helps. But there are system destroyers also, and they also help. There is a rhythmic circle, just like day and night, again day comes. Again night comes. They help because sometimes it happens that when there are so many systems, people get confused, and rather than moving with the maps become so heavy that they cannot carry them. It happens always. For example, a tradition, a very long tradition, is helpful because it will give confidence because it is so long. But because it is so long, it is heavy also. It has become a dead weight. So rather than helping you to move, you cannot move because of it. You have to be unburdened. So there are system destroyers who destroy the system from your mind and unburden you and help you to move. They both help, but it depends. It depends on the age. It depends on the person who is to be helped. In this age, systems have become very heavy and confused. For many reasons, the whole point has been lost. Before, each system lived in its own world. A Jain was born Jain, lived Jain, died Jain. He did not study Hindu scriptures, it was prohibited. He did not go to the mosque or the church, that was a sin. He lived in the walls of his system. Nothing alien ever penetrated his mind, so no confusion was there. But all that has been destroyed, and everyone is acquainted with everything else. Hindus are reading the Quran and Mohammedans are reading the Gita. Christians are moving to the East, and the East is moving to the West. Everything is confused. The confidence that used to come from a system is no longer there. Everything has penetrated your mind and things are jumbled up. Jesus is not alone there. Krishna has penetrated, and Mohammed has also penetrated, and they have contradicted each other within you. Now nothing is certain. The Bible says this, the Gita says exactly the contrary. Mohammed says this, Mahavir is just the opposite. They have contradicted, you are no longer anywhere. You don't belong, you are simply standing there confused. No path is yours. In such a state of mind, system destroying can be helpful. Hence the great appeal of Krishnamurti in the West. He does not have so much appeal in the East because the East is still not as confused as the West, because the East is still not as educated about others. The West is obsessed about knowing about others. They know too much. Now no system is real. They know that everything is a make-believe, and once you know it, it will not work. Krishnamurti appeals to them because he says leave all systems. If you can leave all systems, you will become unconfused, but it depends on you. It may happen, as it happens almost always, that all the systems will remain there, and this new system of destroying all systems will also enter. So one more disease is added. Jesus goes on speaking, Krishna goes on speaking, and then Krishnamurti also enters. Your mind becomes the Tower of Babel, so many tongues, and you cannot understand what is happening. You just feel crazy. If you can believe in a system, so far so good. If you cannot believe in any system, then drop all. Then be completely clean, unburdened. But don't be just in the middle of these two alternatives. And it appears that everyone is just in the middle. Sometimes you move to the right, sometimes to the left, then again to the right and then to left, just like the pendulum of a clock. You go from this side to that, this side to that. This movement may appear to you that you are proceeding. You are not proceeding anywhere. Every step cancels some other step, because when you move to the right and then to the left, you go on contradicting yourself. In the end, you are just confused, puzzled, a chaos. Either be unburdened completely, that will be helpful. You will be clean, innocent, childlike, and you can fly, or if that understanding seems too dangerous to you, if you are afraid of unburdening, because that will lead you into a vacuum, into an emptiness, if that unburdening looks dangerous and you are scared, then choose a system. But there are many who go on saying to you that everything is the same. The Quran says the same, the Bible says the same, the Gita says the same, their message is the same. These people are the great confusers. The Quran, the Bible, the Gita, they don't say the same, they are systems, clear-cut systems, different, not only different, but sometimes contradictory and opposite. For example, Mahavir says that non-violence has to be the key. If you are violent, even slightly violent, the door of ultimate reality is closed for you. This is a technique. To become totally non-violent needs a complete cleansing of your mind and body both. You have to be purified completely. Only then will you become non-violent. This process of becoming no-violent will purify you so totally that the very process will become the end. Just the opposite is Krishna's message. He says to Arjuna, don't be afraid of killing because the soul cannot be killed. You can kill the body but you cannot kill the soul, so why be afraid? And the body is already dead, so that which is dead will be dead, and that which is alive will remain alive. You need not be concerned. It is just a play. He is also right, because if you can come to realize this point that the soul cannot be destroyed, then the whole life becomes a play, a fiction, a drama. And if the whole life becomes a drama, even murder and suicide become a drama to you, not just in thinking, but you realize the fact that everything is just a dream. Death too will make you a witness, and that witnessing will become transcendence. You will transcend the world. The whole world becomes a drama. There is nothing good, nothing bad, just a dream. You need not worry about it. But these two things are totally different. They lead to the same point ultimately, but you should not mix them. If you mix them, you will suffer. System makers have been there to help you. System destroyers have been there to help you. But it seems that no one has been able to help. You are so adamant and so cunning, you always find some loopholes to escape through. Buddha and Krishna and Jesus, every century they go on teaching certain things. You go on listening, but you are very clever. You listen, and yet you don't listen. And you always find something, some hole, from where you can escape. Now the trick of the modern mind is that if there is a system, if Gurdjieff is teaching, then people will go to him and say, Krishnamurti says no system. These same people will go to Krishnamurti teaches no system, and they will say, but Gurdjieff says that without a system nothing can be done. So while near Gurdjieff, they use Krishnamurti as a loophole to escape. While near Krishnamurti, they use Gurdjieff as a trick to escape. But they are not deceiving anybody, they are simply destroying themselves. Gurdjieff can help, Krishnamurti can help, but they cannot help against you. You must be certain about certain things. 1. Either you need help or you don't need it. 2. Either you can move into the unknown without any fear or you cannot. And 3. Without any method, without any technique, without any system, can you proceed a single inch or can't you? These 3 things you have to decide within you. Analyze your mind, open it, look into it and decide what type of mind you have got. If you decide that you cannot do it alone, then you need a system, a master, a scripture, a technique. If you think that you can do alone, then there is no need for anything else. You are the master, you are the scripture, you are the technique. But be honest. And if you feel that it is impossible to decide, it is not easy to decide. If you feel confused, then first try a master, a technique, a system. And try it hard to the very extreme, so that if something is going to happen, it happens. If nothing is going to happen, then you come to a point where you can decide that now you will have all, you will be alone. That too will be good. But my suggestion is that you should always start with a master, a system, a technique, because in both ways it will be good. If you can achieve through it, it is good. If you cannot achieve through it, then the whole thing becomes futile and you can drop it, and then you can proceed alone. Then you will not need Krishnamurti to tell you that no master is needed, you will know it. Then you will not need any Zen teaching to tell you to throw away your scriptures and burn them, you will have already burned them. So it is good to proceed with a master, with a system, with a technique, but be sincere. When I say be sincere, I mean that you should do whatsoever you can do with a master, so that if something can happen, it happens. If nothing can happen, then you can conclude that this is not the path for you and you can move alone. Chapter 77. Become each being. Feel the consciousness of each person as your own consciousness. So, leaving aside concern for self, become each being. This consciousness exists as each being, and nothing else exists. This consciousness is the spirit of guidance of each one, be this one. Existence as such is one. The human problem arises because of human self-consciousness. Consciousness gives everyone a feeling that they are separate, and the feeling that you are separate from existence creates all the problems. Basically, this feeling is false, and whatsoever is based on a falsity will create anguish, will create problems, will create confusion. And whatsoever you do, if it is based on this false separateness, it will go wrong. So from the very beginning, the problem of human anguish has to be tackled. How does it arise? Consciousness gives you a feeling that you are the center of your being, and consciousness makes you aware that others are other, that you are different from them. This difference is just because you are conscious. While you are asleep, there is no difference. You are again merged with the universe. Hence, so much bliss comes out of sleep. In the morning, you feel refreshed, rejuvenated, again alive, fresh. What is happening in deep sleep? You are losing your ego, you are losing yourself, you are falling into a unity with the universe. That falling back in the unity makes you fresh and alive, and in the morning you feel blissful, all the anguish disappears. All conflict, all disturbance disappears. All fear, all death disappears because death is possible only if you are separate. If you are not separate, then death is impossible. Who is going to die if you are not separate? Who can suffer if you are not separate? So all Tantra, yoga, and other methods of meditation are just to make you aware that separateness is false and inseparateness is real. And if you can become aware of that, you will be totally different, because the center will have disappeared from you, and it will take its right place in the universe. You will be just a wave on this vast ocean. You will not be separate, so you will not be afraid. You will not feel insecure. You will not feel the anguish of approaching death and annihilation. All that disappears with the ego. Hindus have always believed that samadhi is conscious sleep. In sleep, it happens automatically that you are no more. The existence is and you are no more. But you are deeply unconscious, so you don't know what is happening. If this same phenomenon can happen consciously, you become enlightened. Buddha moves to the same source that you move every night in deep sleep, in dreamless sleep. But Buddha moves to that source consciously, alert, aware. He knows where he is moving to, he knows what is happening, and when he comes back from that deep source, he comes totally different. The old has disappeared and a new being, a new energy has arisen out of it. Of this being, the center is the universe. And with this transfer of the center, all your worry, all your anguish, all your hell disappears, simply disappears. It is not solved, it is simply not there. It cannot exist there without the ego. So how to be consciously deep asleep? How to move into sleep consciously? How to remain alert while you are losing the ego? The ego is a byproduct of your whole upbringing, a byproduct of the natural course of life. It has to be there. There is no other way. No being can evolve without being involved with the ego. But a point comes when the ego can be dropped and should be dropped, and the being should transcend it. The ego is just like the shell of the egg. It is needed, it protects. Just like the shell of a seed, it is needed, it protects. But the protection can become dangerous also if it protects too much. If it goes on protecting and doesn't allow the seed to sprout, then it becomes a hindrance. It must dissolve into the earth so that the inner life evolves out of it. It must die. The seed must die. Every man is born as a seed. The ego is the outer covering. It protects the child. If a child is born without the ego, without the feeling that I exist, he cannot survive. He will to be able to protect himself, he will not be able to struggle, he will not be able in any way to exist. He needs a strong center. Even if it is false, it is needed. But a moment comes when this help becomes a hindrance. It protects you from outside, but it becomes so strong that it will not allow you, the inner being, to spread, to go beyond it, to sprout. So ego is needed, and then ego transcendence is needed. If someone dies with the ego, he has died as a seed. He has died without really attaining the destiny that was possible, without attaining existence consciously. These techniques are for how to destroy this seed. The first technique: feel the consciousness of each person as your own consciousness. So, leaving aside concern for self, become each being. Feel the consciousness of each person as your own consciousness. In reality it is so, but it is not felt so. You feel your consciousness as yours, and others' consciousnesses you never feel. At the most you infer that others are also conscious. You infer because you think that because you are conscious, other beings like you must be conscious. This is a logical inference. You don't feel them as conscious. It is just like when you have a headache, you feel your headache, you have a consciousness of it. But if someone else has a headache, you infer you cannot feel the other's headache. You simply infer that whatsoever he is saying must be true, and he must have something like you. But you cannot feel it. The feeling can come only if you become conscious about others' consciousnesses, otherwise it is a logical inference. You believe, you trust, that others are saying something honestly, and whatsoever they are saying is worth believing, because you also have similar types of experiences. There is a logical school which says that nothing can be known about the other. It is impossible. At the most, there can be an inference, but nothing certain can be known about others. How can you know that others have pain like you, that others have anxieties like you? Others are there, but we cannot penetrate them. We can only just touch their surface. Their inner being remains unknown. We remain closed in ourselves. The world around us is not a felt world. It is just inferred logically, rationally. The mind says it is there, but the heart is not touched by it. That is why we behave with others as if they are things, not persons. Our relationship with persons is also as it is with things. A husband behaves towards his wife as if she is a thing, he possesses her. The wife possesses the husband just like a thing. If we behaved with the other as if they were persons, then we would not try to possess them, because only things can be possessed. A person means freedom. A person cannot be possessed. If you try to possess them, you will kill them, they will become things. Our relationship with others is really not an I-thou relationship. Deep down it is just an I-it relationship. The other is just a thing to be manipulated, to be used, exploited. That is why love becomes more and more impossible, because love means taking the other as a person, as a conscious being, as a freedom, as something as valuable as you are. If you behave as if everything is a thing, then you are the center and things are just to be used. The relationship becomes utilitarian. Things have no value in themselves, the value is that you can use them, they exist for you. You can be related to your house, the house exists for you. It is a utility. The car exists for you, but the wife doesn't exist for you and the husband doesn't exist for you. The husband exists for himself, and the wife exists for herself. A person exists for himself. That is what being a person means. And if you allow the person to be a person and don't reduce him to being a thing, you will by and by start feeling him. Otherwise you cannot feel. Your relationship will remain conceptual, intellectual, mind to mind, head to head but not heart to heart. This technique says, feel the consciousness of each person as your own consciousness. This will be difficult because first you have to feel the person, as a conscious being. Even that is difficult. Jesus says, love your neighbor as you love yourself. This is the same thing, but the other must first become a person for you. He must exist in his own right, not to be exploited, manipulated, utilized, not as a means but an end in himself. First, the other must become a person. The other must become a thou, as valuable as you are. Only then can this technique be applied. Feel the consciousness of each person as your own consciousness. First feel that the other is conscious, and then this can happen, you can feel that the other has the same consciousness that you have. Really, the other disappears. Only a consciousness flows between you and him. You become two poles of one consciousness flowing, of one current. In deep love, it happens that the two persons are not two. Something between the two has come into being and they have just become two poles. Something is flowing between the two. When this flow is there, you will feel blissful. If love gives bliss, it gives bliss only because of this, that two persons, just for a single moment, lose their egos, the other is lost, and oneness comes into being just for as in glee moment. If it happens, it is ecstatic, it is blissful, you have entered paradise. Just a single moment, and it can be transforming. This technique says that you can do this with every person. In love you can do it with one person, but in meditation you have to do it with every person. Whosoever comes near you, simply dissolve into him and feel that you are not two lives, but one life, flowing. This is just changing the gestalt. Once you know how, once you have done it, it is very easy. In the beginning it seems impossible because we are so stuck in our own egos. It is difficult to lose it, difficult to become a flow. So it will be good if in the beginning you try with something that you are not very scared or afraid of. You will be less afraid of a tree, so it will be easier. Sitting near a tree, just feel the tree and feel that you have become one with it, that there is a flow within you, a communication, a dialogue, a melting. Sitting near a flowing river, just feel the flow. Feel that you and the river have become one. Lying under the sky, just feel that you and the sky have become one. In the beginning, it will be just imagination, but by and by you will feel that you are touching reality through imagination. And then try it with persons. This is difficult in the beginning because there is a fear. Because you have been reducing persons to things, you are afraid that if you allow someone to be so intimate, he will also reduce you to a thing. That is the fear. So no one allows much intimacy, a gap is always to be kept and guarded. Too much closeness is dangerous because the other can convert you into a thing, he can try to possess you. That is the fear. You are trying to convert others into things, and others are trying to convert you, and no one wants to be a thing. No one wants to become a means. No one wants to be used. It is the most degrading phenomenon to be reduced to just a means to something, not valuable in yourself. But everyone is trying. Because of this, there is a deep fear, and it will be difficult to start this technique with persons. So start with a river, with a hill, with the stars, with the sky, with trees. Once you come to know the feeling of what happens when you become one with the tree, once you come to know how blissful you become when you become one with the river, how without losing anything you gain the whole existence, then you can try it with persons. And if it is so blissful with a tree, with a river, you cannot imagine how much more blissful it will be with a person, because a person is a higher phenomenon, a more highly evolved being. Through a person you can reach higher peaks of experience. If you can become ecstatic with even a rock, with a person you can feel a divine ecstasy happening to you. But start with something that you are not much afraid of, or if there is a person you love, a friend, a beloved, a lover, of whom you are not afraid, with whom you can be really intimate and close without any fear, with whom you can lose yourself without getting scared deep down that he may turn you into a thing if you have someone like that, then try this technique. Lose yourself consciously into him. When you lose yourself consciously into someone, that someone will lose himself into you. When you are open and you flow into the other starts flowing into you, and there is a deep meeting, a communion. Two energies melt into each other. In that state there is no ego, no individual, simply consciousness. And if this is possible with one individual, it is possible with the whole universe. What saints have called ecstasy, samadhi, is just a deep love phenomenon between a person and the whole universe. Feel the consciousness of each person as your own consciousness. So, leaving aside concern for self, become each being. We are always concerned with our own self. Even while we are in love, we are concerned with our own self. That is why love becomes a misery. It can become heaven, but it becomes a hell, because even lovers are concerned with their own selves. The other is loved because he gives you happiness. The other is loved because you feel good with him. But the other is still not loved as if he is something valuable in himself or herself. The value comes through your enjoyment. You are gratified, you are satisfied in some way. That is why the other has become significant. This is also using the other. Concern for the self means exploitation of the other. And religious consciousness can come into existence only when the concern for the self is lost, because then you become non-exploitive. With existence, your relationship becomes one, not of exploitation, but of sheer sharing, sheer bliss. You are not using, you are not being used, it becomes a sheer celebration of being. But concern for the self has to be thrown away. And it is very deep-rooted. It is so deep-rooted that you are not even aware of it. In one of the Upanishads, it is said that the husband loves his wife, not for the wife, but for himself. And the mother loves the child, not for the child, but for herself. The concern for the self is so deep-rooted that whatsoever you do for yourself. This means that you are always gratifying the ego, feeding a false center which has become a barrier between you and the universe. Lose the concern for the self. If even sometimes, even for a few moments, you can lose concern for the self and can become concerned with the other's self, you will be entering a different reality, a different dimension. Hence so much emphasis on service, love, compassion. Because compassion, love, service mean concern for the other's self, not your own. But look, human mind is so cunning that it has converted service, compassion, and love into concerns for the self. A Christian missionary serves, and his service is sincere. Really, no one else can serve so deeply and intensely as a Christian missionary. No Hindu can do that, no Mohammedan can do that, because Jesus has emphasized service so much. A Christian missionary is serving poor people, ill people, diseased people. But deep down he is concerned with himself, not with them. This service is just a method to reach heaven. He is not concerned with them, he is not really concerned with them at all, he is concerned with his own self. Through service he can achieve a greater self, so he is doing service. But he has missed the basic point, because service means the concern for the other is the center and you have become the periphery. Try it sometime, make someone the center, then his happiness becomes your happiness, his misery becomes your misery. Whatsoever happens, happens to him and flows to you. But he is the center. If once, even once, you can feel that the other is the center and you have become just a periphery to him, you have entered a different type of existence, a different dimension of experience. Because in that moment you will feel a deep bliss, unknown before, unexperienced before. Just by making the other the concern, you will lose all misery. In that moment there will be no hell for you. You have entered paradise. Why does it happen? It happens because the ego is the root of all misery. If you can forget it, if you can dissolve it, all misery dissolves with it. Feel the consciousness of each person as your own consciousness. So, leaving aside concern for self, become each being, become the tree, become the river, become the wife, become the husband, become the child, become the mother, become the friend. It can be practiced every moment of life. But in the beginning, it will be difficult. So do it for at least 1 hour every day. In that hour, whatsoever passes around you, become that. You will wonder how it can happen. There is no other way to know how it can happen. You have to practice it. Sit with the tree and feel that you have become the tree. And when the wind comes and the whole tree starts shaking and trembling, feel that shaking and trembling in you. When the sun rises and the whole tree becomes alive, feel that aliveness in you. When a shower of rain comes and the whole tree is satisfied and content, a long thirst, a long awaiting has disappeared, and the tree is completely satisfied and content. Feel satisfied and content with the tree. And then you will become aware of the subtle moods, of the nuances of a tree. You have seen that tree for many years, but you don't know its moods. Sometimes it is happy. Sometimes it is unhappy. Sometimes it is sad, dead, worried, frustrated. Sometimes it is very blissful, ecstatic. There are moods. The tree is alive and it feels. And if you become one with it, then you will feel it. Then you will feel whether the tree is young or old, whether the tree is dissatisfied with its life or satisfied, whether the tree is in love with existence or not, is anti, against, furious, angry, whether the tree is violent or there is a deep compassion in it. As you are changing every moment, the tree is also changing. If you can feel a deep affinity with it, what they call empathy. Empathy means you have become so sympathetic that really you become one. The moods of the tree become your moods. And then, if this goes deeper and deeper and deeper, you can talk, you can have a communication with the tree. Once you know its moods, you start understanding its language, and the tree will share its mind with you. It will share its agonies and ecstasies. And this can happen with the whole universe. For at least 1 hour every day, try to be in empathy with something. In the beginning, you will look foolish to yourself. You will think, what kind of stupidity am I doing? You will look around, and you will feel that if someone looks or someone sees or someone comes to know, they will think you have gone crazy. But only in the beginning. Once you enter this world of empathy, the whole world will look crazy to you. They are missing so much unnecessarily. Life gives in such abundance, and they are missing it. They are missing because they are closed. They don't allow life to enter into them. And life can enter you only if you enter life through many, many ways, through many paths, through multi-dimensions. Be in empathy for at least 1 hour every day. This was the meaning of prayer in the beginning of every religion. The meaning of prayer was to be in an affinity with the universe, to be in a deep communication with the universe. In prayer you are talking to God. God means the totality. Sometimes you may be angry with God, sometimes thankful, but one thing is certain: you are in communication. God is not a mental concept. It has become a deep, intimate relationship. That is what prayer means. But our prayers have gone rotten because we don't know how to communicate with beings. And if you cannot communicate with beings, you cannot communicate with the being with a capital B. It is impossible. If you cannot communicate with a tree, how can you communicate with the total existence? And if you feel foolish talking to a tree, you will feel more foolish talking to God. Leave 1 hour aside every day for a prayerful state of mind, and don't make your prayer a verbal affair. Make it a feeling thing. Rather than talking with the head, feel it. Go and touch the tree, hug the tree, kiss the tree. Close your eyes and be with the tree as if you are with your beloved. Feel it. And soon you will come to a deep understanding of what it means to put the self aside, of what it means to become the other. Feel the consciousness of each person as your own consciousness. So, leaving aside concern for self, become each being. The second technique: this consciousness exists as each being, and nothing else exists. Scientists used to say in the past that only matter existed, nothing else. Great systems of philosophy arose based on the concept that only matter existed. But even those who believed that matter existed had to concede that there was something like consciousness. Then what was it? They said that consciousness was just an epiphenomenon, just a byproduct of matter. It was nothing but matter in disguise, something very subtle but still material. But this half-century has seen a very great miracle happen. Scientists tried and tried to find out what matter was, but the more they tried, the more they came to realize that there was nothing like matter. Matter was analyzed, and it was found that it had disappeared. Nietzsche had said just 100 years before, God is dead. With God dead, there can be no consciousness because God means the totality of consciousness. But within 100 years, matter is dead, and it is dead not because religious people believe it so, but because scientists have come to a definite conclusion that matter is just appearance. It appears to be as it is because we cannot see very deeply. If we can see deeply, it disappears, and then energy is left. This phenomenon of energy, this non-material energy force, has been known by mystics since long ago. In the Vedas, in the Bible, in the Quran, in the Upanishads all over the world, mystics have penetrated into existence and have always concluded that matter is just an appearance. Deep down there is no matter, only energy. With this science now agrees. And the mystics have said one thing more which science has yet to agree with, but with which it will have to agree one day. The mystics have come to another conclusion also. They say that when you penetrate deep into energy, energy also disappears, and only consciousness remains. So these are the three layers. Matter is the first layer, the surface. If you penetrate the surface, then the second layer becomes apparent. You can perceive the second layer, which is energy. Then, if you penetrate energy, the third layer becomes illumined. That third layer is consciousness. In the beginning, science said that mystics were just dreaming, because science saw only matter and nothing else. Then science tried to penetrate, and the mystic's second layer was uncovered. Matter is just apparent. Deep down it is nothing but energy. And the mystic's other claim is penetrate more into energy, and energy also disappears. Then there remains only consciousness. That consciousness is God. That is the deepest, most core. If you penetrate into your body, these three layers are there. Just on the surface is your body. The body looks material, but deep down there are currents of life, prana, vital energy. Without that vital energy, your body would be just a corpse. It is alive, with something flowing in it. That flowing something is energy. But deeper, still deeper, you are aware, you can witness. You can witness both your body and your vital energy. That witnessing is your consciousness. Every existence has three layers. The deepest is the witnessing consciousness. In the middle is vital energy, and just on the surface is matter, a material body. This technique says, this consciousness exists as each being and nothing else exists. What are you? Who are you? If you close your eyes and try to find out who you are, ultimately you are bound to come to a conclusion that you are consciousness. Everything else may belong to you, but you are not that. The body belongs to you, but you can be aware of the body, and that which is aware of the body becomes separate. The body becomes an object of knowledge, and you become the subject. You can know your body. Not only can you know, you can manipulate your body, you can activate it or make it inactive. You are separate, you can do something with your body. And not only are you not your body, you are not your mind either. You can become aware of your mind also. If thoughts move, you can see them, and you can do something with them. You can make them disappear completely. You can become thoughtless. Or you can concentrate your consciousness on one thought and not allow it to move from there. You can focus yourself on it and make it remain there. Or you can allow a river-like flow of thoughts. You can do something with your thoughts. You can even dissolve them completely, until there is no thought but still you are. You will know that there are no thoughts, that a vacuum has come into being. But you will be there, witnessing that vacuum. The only thing you cannot separate yourself from is your witnessing energy. That means you are that. You cannot separate yourself from it. You can separate yourself from everything else. You can know that you are not your body, not your mind. But you cannot know that you are not your witnessing, because whatsoever you do, you will be the witness. You cannot separate yourself from witnessing. That witnessing is consciousness. And unless you come to a point from where separation becomes impossible, you have not come to yourself. So there are methods by which the seeker goes on eliminating. He goes on eliminating first the body, then the mind, and then he comes to the point where nothing can be eliminated. In the Upanishads they say, neti, neti. This is a deep method. This is not, that is not. So the seeker goes on knowing, this is not me, this is not I. He goes on until ultimately he comes to a point where he cannot say, this is not I, just a witnessing self remains, pure consciousness remains, this pure consciousness exists as each being. Whatsoever is in existence is just a phenomenon of this consciousness, just a wave, just a crystallization of this consciousness, and nothing else exists. But this has to be felt. Analysis can be helpful, intellectual understanding can be helpful, but it has to be felt that nothing else exists, only consciousness. Then behave as if only consciousness exists. I have heard about Lin Kai, a Zen master. As he was sitting one day in his hut, someone came to see him. The man who came was angry. He may have been fighting with his wife or with his boss or something, but he was angry. He pushed open the door in anger, he threw down his shoes in anger, and then he came, very respectfully, and bowed down to Lin Kai. Lin Kai said, "First go and ask forgiveness from the door and from the shoes." The man must have looked at Lin Kai very strangely. There were other people also sitting there and they started laughing. Lin Kai said, "Stop," and then said to the man, "If you don't do it, then leave. I will have nothing to do with you." The man said, "It will look crazy to ask forgiveness from the shoes and from the door." Lin Kai said, "It was not crazy when you expressed anger. Will it now be crazy? Everything has a consciousness. So you go, and unless the door forgives you, I am not going to allow you in." The man felt awkward, but he had to go. Later on he became a monk himself and became enlightened. When he became enlightened, he related the whole anecdote and he said, "When I stood before the door, asking forgiveness, I felt awkward, foolish. But then I thought that if Lin Kai says so, there must be something in it. I trusted Lin Kai, so I thought that even if it was foolish, do it. In the beginning, whatsoever I was saying to the door was just superficial, artificial. But by and by I started to get warm. And Lin Kai was waiting and he said that he would watch. If the door forgave me, only then could I come in. Otherwise I had to stay there until I had persuaded the door and the shoes to forgive me. By and by I became warm. I forgot that many people were looking. I forgot about Lin Kai, and then the concern became sincere and real. I started to feel the door and the shoes were changing their mood. And the moment I realized that the door and the shoes had changed, and that they are feeling happy, Lin Kai immediately said that I could come. I had been forgiven. This incident became a transforming phenomenon in his life, because for the first time he became aware that everything is really a crystallization of consciousness. If you cannot see it, it is because you are blind. If you cannot hear it, it is because you are deaf. There is nothing the matter with the things around you. Everything is condensed consciousness. The problem is with you, you are not open and sensitive. This technique says, this consciousness exists as each being, and nothing else exists. Live with this notion. Be sensitive to this, and wherever you move, move with this mind and this heart that everything is consciousness and nothing else exists. Sooner or later, the world will change its face. Sooner or later, objects disappear and persons start appearing everywhere. Sooner or later, the whole world will be suddenly illumined, and you will know that you were living in a world of dead things just because of your insensitivity. Otherwise, everything is alive, not only alive, everything is conscious. Everything deep down is nothing but consciousness. But if you leave it as a theory, if you believe in it as a theory, then nothing will happen. You will have to make it a way of life, a style of life, behaving as if everything is conscious. In the beginning, it will be an as if, and you will feel foolish, but if you can persist in your foolishness, and if you can dare to be foolish, soon the world will start revealing its mysteries. Science is not the only methodology to use to enter the mysteries of existence. Really, it is the crudest methodology, the slowest. A mystic can enter existence in a single moment. Science will take millions of years to penetrate that much. The Upanishads say that the world is illusory, that matter is illusory, but only after 5,000 years can science say that matter is illusory. The Upanishads say that deep down energy is conscious. Science will take another 5,000 years more. Mysticism is a jump. Science is a very slow movement. The intellect cannot jump. It has to argue every fact, prove, disprove, experiment, but the heart can jump immediately. Remember, for the intellect a process is necessary, then comes the conclusion process first, then the conclusion logical. For the heart, conclusion comes first, then the process. It is just the reverse. That is why mystics cannot prove anything. They have the conclusion, but they don't have the process. You may not be aware, you may not have noticed, that mystics simply talk about conclusions. If you read the Upanishads, you will find only conclusions. When for the first time they were translated into Western languages, Western philosophers couldn't see the point because there was no argument. How do you reach this conclusion? What is the proof? On what premises do you declare? There is Brahma. The Upanishads don't say anything, they simply come to a conclusion. The heart reaches a conclusion immediately, and when the conclusion is reached, you can create the process. That is the meaning of theology. Mystics reach the conclusion and theologians create the process. Jesus reached the conclusion, and then the theologians sent Augustine, Thomas Aquinas, they created the process. That is secondary. The conclusion has been reached, now you have to find the proofs. The proof is in the life of the mystic. He cannot argue about it. He himself is the proof if you can see it. If you cannot see, then there is no proof. Then religion is absurd. Don't make these techniques theories. They are not. They are jumps into experience, jumps into conclusion. The third technique, this consciousness, is the spirit of guidance of each one, be this one. The first thing is that you have the guide within you, but you don't use it. And you have not used it for so long, for so many lives, that you may not even be aware that a guide exists within you. I was reading Castaneda's book. His master, Don Juan, gives him a beautiful experiment to do. It is one of the oldest experiments. On a dark night, on a very hilly track, dangerous, without any light, Castaneda's master said, "You simply believe in the inner guide and start running." It was dangerous. It was a hilly track, unknown, with trees, bushes, abysses, he could fall anywhere. Even in the daylight he had to be alert walking there, and at night everything was dark. He could not see anything and his master said, "Don't walk, run." He couldn't believe it, it was simply suicidal. He became scared but the master ran. He ran off just like a wild animal and came running back. And Castaneda could not understand how he was doing it. Not only was he running in this darkness, but each time he came running directly to him, as if he could see. Then by and by Castaneda gathered courage. If this old man could do this, why not he? He tried, and by he felt an inner light coming in. Then he started running. You only are whenever you stop thinking. The moment you stop thinking, the inner happens. If you don't think, everything is okay, it is as if some inner guide is working. Your reason has misguided you, and the greatest misguidance has been this: you cannot believe in the inner guide. First, you have to convince your reason. Even if your inner guide says, "Go ahead," you have to convince your reason, and then you miss opportunities. Because there are moments. You can use them or you can miss them. Intellect takes time, and while you are pondering, contemplating, thinking, you miss the moment. Life is not waiting for you. One has to live immediately. One has to be really a warrior, as they say in Zen, because when you are fighting in the field with your sword, you cannot think, you have to move without thinking. Zen masters have used the sword as a technique for meditation, and they say in Japan that if two Zen masters, two meditative persons, are fighting with those swords, there can be no conclusion. No one can be defeated and no one is going to win, because both are not thinking. The swords are just not in their hands, they are in the hands of their inner guide, the non-thinking inner guide, and before the other attacks, the guide knows and defends. You cannot think about it because there is no time. The other is aiming at your heart. In a flash of a moment, the sword will penetrate to the heart. There is no time to think about it, about what to do. When the thought, penetrate the heart, occurs to him, simultaneously the thought, defend, must occur to you simultaneously. With no gap, only then can you defend. Otherwise you will be no more. So they teach swordsmanship as a meditation, and they say, be moment to moment with the inner guide. Don't think. Allow the inner being to do whatsoever happens to it. Don't interfere with the mind. This is very difficult because we are so trained with our minds, our schools, our colleges, our universities, the whole culture, the whole pattern of civilization, teach our heads. We have lost contact with the inner guide. Everyone is born with that inner guide, but it is not allowed to work, to function. It is almost paralyzed, but it can be revived. This sutra is for that inner guide. This consciousness is the spirit of guidance of each one, be this one. Don't think with the head. Really, don't think at all. Just move. Try it as some situations. It will be difficult because the old habit will be to start thinking. You will have to be alert not to think, but to feel inwardly what is coming to the mind. You may be confused many times because you will not be able to know whether it is coming from the inner guide or from the surface of the mind. But soon you will know the feeling, the difference. When something comes from the inner, it comes from your navel upwards. You can feel the flow, the warmth, coming from the navel upwards. Whenever your mind thinks, it is just on the surface in the head, and then it goes down. If your mind decided something, then you have to force it down. If your inner guide decides, then something bubbles up in you. It comes from the deep core of your being towards the mind. The mind receives it, but it is not of the mind. It comes from beyond, and that is why the mind is scared about it. For reason it is reliable because it comes from behind without any reason with it, without any proofs. It simply bubbles up. Try it in certain situations. For example, you have lost your path in a forest. Try it. Don't think, just close your eyes. Sit down, be meditative, and don't think. Because it is futile, how can you think you don't know? But thinking has become such a habit that you go on thinking even in moments when nothing can come out of it. Thinking can think only about something which is already known. You are lost in a forest. You don't have any map. There is nobody you can ask. What are you thinking about? But still you think. That thinking will be just a worry, not a thinking. And the more you get worried, the less the inner guide can be competent. Be unworried. Sit down under a tree and just allow thoughts to drop and subside. Just wait, don't think. Don't create the problem, just wait. And when you feel a moment of non-thinking has come, then stand up and start moving. Wheresoever your body moves, allow it to move. You just be a witness. Don't interfere. The lost path can be found very easily. But the only condition is, don't interfere with the mind. This has happened many times unknowingly. Great scientists say that whenever a great discovery has been made, it was never made by the mind. It was always made by the inner guide. Madame Curie was trying to solve a mathematical problem. She did her best, all that was possible, then she got fed up. For days together, weeks together, she had been working and nothing had come out. She was feeling just mad. No path was leading to the solution. Then one night, just exhausted, she fell down and slept, and in the night, in a dream, the conclusion bubbled up. She was so concerned with the conclusion that the dream was broken. She awoke. Immediately, she wrote down the conclusion because there was no process in the dream, just a conclusion. She wrote it down on a pad and then slept again. In the morning, she was puzzled. The conclusion was right, but she didn't know how it had been achieved. There was no process, no method. Then she tried to find the process. Now it was an easier affair because the conclusion was in the hand, and it is easy to go back from the conclusion. She won the Nobel Prize because of this dream, but she always wondered how it happened. When your mind gets exhausted and cannot do any more, it simply retires. In that moment of retirement, the inner guide can give hints, clues, keys. The man who won the Nobel Prize for the inner structure of a human cell saw it in a dream. He saw the whole structure of the human cell, the inner cell, in a dream, and then in the morning he just made a picture of it. He himself couldn't believe that it could be so he had to work for years. After years of work, he could conclude that the dream was true. With Madame Curie, it happened that when she came to know this inner process of the inner guide, she decided to try it. Once there was a problem which she wanted to solve, so she thought, why worry about it, and why try, just go to sleep. She slept well, but there was no solution, so she was puzzled. Many times she tried when there was a problem immediately she would go to sleep, but there was no solution. First, the intellect has to be tried completely. Only then can the solution bubble up. The head has to be completely exhausted, otherwise it goes on functioning, even in a dream. So now scientists say that all the great discoveries are intuitive, not intellectual. This is what is meant by the inner guide. This consciousness of the spirit of guidance of each one, be this one. Lose the head and drop into this inner guide. It is there. Old scriptures say that the master or the guru, the outer guru, can be helpful only in finding the inner guru. That is all. Once the outer guru has helped you to find the inner guru, the function of the outer guru is no more. You cannot reach to the truth through a master. You can reach only to the inner master through a master, and then this inner master will lead you to the truth. The outer master is just a representative, a substitute. He has his inner guide, and he can feel your inner guide also, because they both exist on the same wavelength, they both exist in the same tuning and the same dimension. If I have found my inner guide, I can look into you and feel your inner guide. And if I am really a guide to you, all my guidance will be to lead you to your inner guide. Once you are in contact with the inner guide, I am no longer needed. Now you can move alone. So all that a guru can do is to push you down from your head to your navel, from your reasoning to your intuitive force, from your argumentative mind to your trusting guide. And it is not like this with only human beings. It is so with animals, with birds, with trees, with everything. The inner guide exists, and many new phenomena have been discovered which are mysteries. There are a number of cases. For example, the mother fish dies immediately after she lays the egg. Then the father helps the egg to be fertilized, and then he dies. The egg remains alone without a mother and without a father. It matures. Then a new fish is born. This fish doesn't know anything about father, mother, parents. She doesn't know from where they came. But although this particular fish lives in a particular part of the sea, she will move to the part from where the father and mother came to lay the eggs. She will move to the source. This has been happening again and again, and when she wants to lay an egg she will come to this bank, lay the egg, and die. So there is no communication between parents and their children, but the children somehow know where they have to go, where they have to move, and they never miss. And you cannot misguide them. It has been tried, but you cannot misguide them. They will reach to the source. Some inner guide is working. In Soviet Russia, they have been experimenting with cats, with rats, and with many small animals. A cat, a mother cat, was separated from her children, and the children were taken deep down into the sea. She could not know what was happening to her children. Every type of scientific instrument was attached to the cat to measure what was going on within her mind and her heart. And then one child was killed, deep in the sea. Immediately the mother became aware. Her blood rate changed. She became puzzled and worried, her heartbeat increased. As soon as the child was killed, and the scientific instrument said that she was feeling severe pain. Then after a while everything became normal. Then another child was killed again, the change. And the same with the third child. It happened every time, exactly at the same time, without any time gap. What was happening? Now Soviet scientists say the mother has an inner guide, an inner feeling center, and it is joined to her children, wherever they are. And she immediately feels a telepathic relationship. The human mother will not feel so much. This is puzzling. It should be quite the otherwise. The human mother should feel more because she is more evolved. But she will not because the head has taken everything into its hands, and the inner centers are all lying paralyzed. This consciousness is the spirit of guidance of each one. Be this one. Whenever you are puzzled in a situation, and you cannot see how to get out of it, don't think. Just be in a deep non-thinking and allow the inner guide to guide you. In the beginning you will feel afraid, insecure. But soon, when you come every time to the right conclusion, when you come every time to the right door, you will gather courage and you will become trusting. If this trust happens, I call it faith. This really is religious faith, the trust in the inner guide. Reasoning is part of the ego. It is you believing in yourself. The moment you go deep within you, you have come to the very soul of the universe. Your inner guide is part of the divine guidance. When you follow it, you follow the divine. When you follow yourself, you are complicating things and you don't know what you are doing. You may think yourself very wise, you are not. Wisdom comes from the heart, it is not of the intellect. Wisdom comes from the innermost depth of your being, it is not of the head. Cut your head off, be headless and follow the being, whatsoever, wheresoever it leads. Even if it leads into danger, go into danger, because that will be the path for you and your growth. Through that danger you will grow and become mature. Even if the inner guide leads you to death, go into it, because that is going to be the path for you. Follow it, trust it, and move with it. Chapter 78. The Inner Guide, the first question 1. Some of the techniques, in the 112 methods, seem to be end results, and not techniques, such as those that say to become universal consciousness, or be this one, etc. It seems that we need techniques to achieve these techniques. Were techniques like these meant for very advanced persons who could just become cosmic at a mere suggestion? Such techniques were meant, not for very advanced persons, but for very innocent persons, simple, innocent, trusting. Then just a suggestion is enough. You have to have something to do because you cannot trust. You don't have faith. Unless you do something, nothing can happen to you because you believe in action. If something happens to you suddenly without any doing on your part, you will be scared and you will not believe it. You may even bypass it. You may not even record in the mind that it happened. Unless you do, you cannot feel something happening to you. This is the way of the ego. But for an innocent person, for an innocent, open mind, just a suggestion is enough. Why? Because really, the innermost being is not something to be achieved in the future, it is here and now, it is already the case. Whatsoever is to be attained is here, present in you right this very moment. If you can trust without any effort, it can become revealed. It is not a question of time, of you having to work it out. It is not somewhere far away that you have to travel to. It is you. You may call it God, you may call it nirvana, or whatsoever you like, it is you already. So even a suggestion, if believed totally, can reveal it to you. That's why so much significance is given to Shraddha, trust, faith. If a person can believe in the Master, just a hint, a suggestion, an indication, and in a flash everything will be revealed. The basic point to be understood is this: there are things which you cannot attain right now because time will be needed to produce them. They are not with you. If I give you a seed, it cannot immediately become a tree. Time will be needed, and you will have to wait and work. Then the seed cannot become the tree immediately, but you are really the tree already. It is not a seed which has to be worked. It is a tree hidden in darkness. It is a tree which is covered. It is a tree which you are inattentive to, that's all. Your inattention is the cover. You are not looking at it, that's all. You are looking somewhere else, and that's why you are missing it. In a trusting moment, the Master can tell you, just by a suggestion, that it is here. And if you can believe, if you can look in that dimension in trust, it will be revealed to you. These techniques are not for advanced people. They are for simple, innocent people. Advanced people are, in a way, difficult. They are not innocent, they have been working, they have attained something, and they have a subtle ego behind it. They know something, so they are not innocent, they cannot believe. You will have to argue and convince them, and then too they will have to make some efforts. By an innocent mind, I mean a mind which is not arguing. It is just like a small child. The child goes with his father hand in hand, he is not afraid. Whatsoever the father is leading, he must be leading in the right direction. The father knows, so the child need not worry about it. He is not thinking of the future. What is going to happen is not his concern. He is enjoying the very journey. The end is not the problem at all. For the father it may be a problem, he may be afraid. He may be wondering whether they have lost the path or not, whether they are on the right path or not. But for the child it is not a problem. He knows that the father knows. That's all. And wherever the father leads, he will follow, and he is happy at this very moment. A trusting disciple, an innocent mind is just like a child, and the Master is more than a father. Once the disciple surrenders, he trusts. Then at any moment, when the Master feels that the disciple is tuned, that the disciple is in harmony, he will just give a hint. I have heard about a Zen master, Bokuju. He struggled hard to attain enlightenment, but nothing happened. Really, with a hard struggle sometimes nothing will happen, because the hard struggle is through the ego. And through hard struggle, the ego becomes more hard. He did whatsoever could be done, but the goal was no nearer. Rather, on the contrary, it was further away. Further away than when he had started the journey. He was puzzled, confused, so he came to his Master. The Master said, for a few years just completely stop any effort, any goal, any destination. Just forget and live moment to moment near me. Don't do anything. Simply eat, sleep, walk, and just be near me. And don't raise any question. Just see me, my presence. And don't make any effort because nothing is to be achieved. Forget the achieving mind because the achieving mind is always in the future, that's why it goes on missing the present. Just forget that you have to achieve anything. Bokuju believed in his Master. He started living with him. For a few days, a few months, ideas floated in, thoughts came, and sometimes he would become uneasy and would think, I am wasting time. I am not doing anything. How can it happen without doing anything? If it couldn't happen through such hard effort, how is it going to be easily attained by not doing anything? But still, he believed in the Master. By and by the mind slowed down, and in the presence of his Master, he started to feel a subtle calm flowing, a silence would fall from the Master onto him. He started feeling emerging. Years passed. He completely forgot that he was. The Master became the center, and he started to live like a shadow. Then the miracle is possible. This happening itself is the miracle. One day, suddenly, the Master called his name, Bokuju. Are you here? Just this, Bokuju, are you here? And he said, yes, Master. And it is said he became enlightened. There was nothing like a technique, not even a suggestion, just Bokuju, are you here? The total presence had been called, are you here? Not moving anywhere, not gone somewhere else. With total intensity, are you present here? And Bokuju said, yes, Master. In that yes he became totally present there. It is said that the master started laughing and Bokuju started laughing, and the master said, "Now you can go. Now you can move out there and help people by your presence." Bokuju never taught any method. He would simply ask this much: just be near, remain present. And whenever a disciple was in tune, he would call the name of the disciple and ask, "Are you here?" This was the whole technique. But this technique will need a grounding of your mind, a deep innocence. There are many techniques which are simple, the simplest possible, just a saying, be this one just a hint. But it must have been said by the master in a certain moment. Be this one cannot always be said. It must have been said in a certain tuning, when the disciple was totally one with the master, or totally with the universe, merged. Then the master says, "Be this one," and suddenly the focus will change, and the last part of the ego will dissolve. These methods worked in the past, but now it is difficult, very difficult, because you are so calculating, you are so clever, and being clever is just against being innocent. You are so calculating, you know too much arithmetic. This calculation goes on in the mind whatsoever you do. It is always calculated, planned. You are never innocent, never open, receptive. You believe too much in yourself, hence you go on missing. These methods won't be helpful for you unless you prepare. That preparation can be very long, and you are very impatient. This age is basically the most impatient age that has ever happened on this earth. Everyone is impatient, everyone is too time conscious, and everyone wants to do everything immediately. Not that it cannot be done, it can be done immediately. But with such time consciousness, it is impossible. People come to me, and they say that they have come only for one day. The next day they are going to Sai Baba, and after meeting him, they will go to Rishikesh, and then they will go somewhere else. Then they return frustrated, and they think there is nothing India can give. It is not a question of whether India can give something or not. The question is always whether you can receive it or not. You are in such a hurry and you want something immediately. Just like instant coffee, you think of instant meditation, instant nirvana. It is not possible. Nirvana cannot be packed, cannot be made instant. Not that it is impossible to make it instant, it can become instant, but it can become instant only with the mind which is not after the instant. That's the problem. It can become instant. Immediately, this moment, it can happen. Not even a single moment is needed. But only to one who is relaxed about time completely. To one who can wait for infinity, for him it will happen instantly. This looks paradoxical, but this is the case. If you can wait for eternity, you will not need to wait at all. But if you cannot wait for even a single moment, you will have to wait for eternity. You will have to wait because the mind which says, "Let it happen immediately," is a mind which has already moved from the moment. It is running, it is standing nowhere, it is just on the move. A mind which is on the move, on the way, cannot be innocent. You may not be aware of it, but innocent people are always without time consciousness. Time lingers slowly. There is no hurry to go anywhere, they are not running. They are enjoying moment to moment, they are chewing each moment, and each moment has its own ecstasy to deliver. But you are in such a hurry that it cannot be delivered. While you are here, your hands are in the future, your mind is in the future. You will miss this moment, and this will be always the case. You will always miss the now, and now is the only time. The future is false, the past is just memory. The past is no more, the future is yet to be, and all that ever happens is the now. Now is the only time. So if you can be prepared to slow down a little, to become non-calculating, playing like children, here and now, then these simple techniques can work miracles. But this century is too time-conscious. That's why you ask, it seems that we need techniques to achieve these techniques. No, these are techniques, not end results. They look like end results because you cannot conceive of how they can work. They can work in particular mind. They cannot work in other types of mind. And really, those who know, they say that all the techniques will ultimately bring you to the innocence where the phenomenon happens. When the phenomenon happens, it will be because the techniques will have brought you to that innocence if the innocence is there. But it is difficult now because nowhere is innocence taught. Everywhere we are teaching cleverness. Universities are not to make you innocent, they are to make you clever, cunning, calculating. The more clever you are, the better you will be in the struggle of life. You can gain much wealth, prestige, power, if you are calculating. If you are innocent, you will prove to be stupid. If you are innocent, then you will be nowhere in this competitive world. This is the problem in this competitive world. You may not be anywhere, But in that non-competitive world of nirvana, if you are innocent, you will be somewhere. If you are calculating, you will not be anywhere in the world of nirvana, but in this world you will be somewhere. And we have chosen this world to be our goal. Old universities differed completely. Their orientation was totally different. Nalanda, Takshila, they did not teach calculation. They did not teach cleverness. They were teaching innocence. Their orientation was different from Oxford or Kashi or Cambridge. Their orientation was totally different. They were creating a different type of mind. So it almost always happened that a person who studied in Takshila or Nalanda would become a bhikkhu, a sannyasin in the end. By the time he graduated from university, he would renounce this world. Those universities were anti-world. They were preparing for some other dimension. They were preparing you for something else which cannot be measured in terms of this world. These techniques were for those type of people. Either they were innocent by their nature or they were training themselves to be innocent. When Jesus said to his followers, "If someone hits you on one cheek, you give him the other," what is he intending to do? He is trying to make you innocent. Only a foolish person would do this. When someone hits you on one cheek, a calculating mind will say, "Hit him hard, immediately." And a really calculating mind will say, before someone hits you, hit him, because attack is the best defense. Ask Machiavelli, he is the cleverest mind. He says, before someone attacks you, you attack him, because attack is the best defense. Once someone has attacked you, you are already weak. He has already gained over you. Now the race is not equal. He is ahead of you. So don't allow the enemy to go ahead. Attack before anybody attacks you. This is a calculating mind. This is a clever mind. Machiavelli was read by every prince and every king in medieval Europe, but he was such a clever person that no king would employ him. He was read, his book was the Bible for power politics. Every prince would read his book, The Prince, and they would follow it, but no king was ready to employ him because he was such a clever man. It was better to keep him away. He was dangerous. He knew too much. He said, "Virtue is not good, but pretending to be virtuous is. Don't be virtuous, but pretend always that you are virtuous. That is the real good, because then you gain from both the ends. From vice you gain, and from virtue also." This is the calculating mind. Go on pretending that you are virtuous and always praise virtue, but never be really virtuous. Always praise virtue so others know that you are a virtuous person. Always condemn vice, but don't be afraid to use it. Jesus says, when someone hits you on one cheek, give him the other. And if someone takes your coat, snatches it, give him your shirt also. And if someone forces you to carry his load for 1 mile, tell him that you are ready to carry it for 2 miles. This is patent foolishness, but very meaningful. If you can do this, these techniques will be for you. Jesus is preparing his disciples for sudden enlightenment. Just think about it. If you can be so innocent, so trusting, that if the other is hitting you, he must be hitting you for your good, so give him the other cheek also, and let him hit it. The other's goodness is believed in, trusted in. No one is your enemy. When Jesus says, "Love your enemies," this is the meaning. No one is your enemy. Don't see the enemy anywhere. That doesn't mean that there will not be enemies and there will not be people who will exploit you. There will be. They will exploit you. But be exploited and don't be cunning. Just look at that dimension. Be exploited, but don't be cunning. Be exploited, but don't be mistrusting. Don't disbelieve. Don't lose faith. That is more valuable than anything others can cheat you of. Nothing else is so valuable. But how do our minds function? If one man deceives you, the whole of humanity is evil. If one man is dishonest, or you think that he is dishonest, then you don't believe in man at all. Then the whole of humanity has become dishonest. If one Jew is a miser, then the whole race of Jews is miserly. If one Mohammedan is bigoted, then all Mohammedans are. Just one is enough for us to lose our faith in all. Jesus says, even if all are dishonest, you should not lose faith, because faith is more valuable than what these dishonest people can take from you by their dishonesty. So really, if you lose faith, you are losing something. Otherwise, nothing is lost. For such innocent people, these techniques are enough. They will not ask for anything more. You say, and it happens to them. Just on hearing the Master, many have become illumined, but in the past, not in this age. I have heard a story about Rinzai. He was a very poor bhikkhu, a poor sannyasin, a beggar. As he was sleeping in his hut, a thief entered. There was nothing in the hut except a blanket that he himself was using. He was sleeping on the floor, covered with his blanket. Then he became very uncomfortable and stared to think, what an unfortunate fellow. He has come so far from the village to find something, and there is nothing in my hut. What misery! How to help him? The only thing is this blanket. And he was under it, and the thief would not have the courage to snatch the blanket, so he slipped out from under it, left it there and slipped into a dark corner. The thief took the blanket and went away. The night was very cold, but Rinzai was happy that the thief had not gone back empty-handed. Then he sat at the window of his hut. The night was cool, and the full moon was in the sky. He wrote a small haiku, a small poem. In the haiku he said, "If I could have given this moon to that thief, I would have, this mind. What has he lost? Just a blanket. What has he gained? The whole world, all that can be gained. He has gained innocence, trust, love. For this man no technique is needed. His master would say, just look, be aware, be alert. And that would do." The second question, question 2, how to differentiate between the dictates of the unconscious mind and that of the inner guide. How can one recognize that the inner guide has come into function? The first thing, because of Freud, much misunderstanding has arisen around the word unconscious. Freud completely misunderstood it, misinterpreted it, and he has become the very basis of modern knowledge about mind. To Freud, unconscious meant simply the repressed conscious, the suppressed part of the conscious. So all that is evil and bad, immoral, has been suppressed. Because the society cannot allow it, it has to be suppressed within. For Freud, that repressed part is the unconscious, but not for mystics. Freud is not a mystic. He has not entered his own unconscious. He has been simply observing cases of patients, ill people, abnormal people, mad, insane, pathological. He has been studying the pathological mind, and through the study of the pathological mind, and that, too, from without, he concluded that just underneath the conscious, there is an unconscious mind. That unconscious mind carries all that has been suppressed from the childhood, all that society has condemned. The mind has suppressed it, just to forget that it is there. But it is there, and it goes on functioning. And it is very powerful. It goes on changing the conscious. It goes on playing tricks with the conscious. The conscious is really impotent before it, because whatsoever is repressed only because it is so powerful that society cannot cope with it. So society has been repressing it, and society doesn't know what else to do with it. For example, sex. It is so powerful that if you don't repress it, you won't know what to do with it. It will lead you into dangerous paths. And it is such a forceful energy that the whole society will become chaotic if it is allowed completely. No marriage could exist, no love could exist, everything could be just a chaos if it was allowed total freedom, because then man would behave like an animal. If there were no marriage, no family, the whole society would be destroyed. Society depends on the unity of the family. The family depends on marriage. Marriage depends on sex suppression. Everything that is natural, forceful, has been inhibited, tabooed so forcibly that you feel guilty about it and you go on fighting with it. Society has not only created policemen outside, it has created inner policemen, your conscience a double arrangement so that you don't go astray, so that you cannot be natural, you have to be unnatural. Now modern psychologists say that insanity is part of civilization. No civilization can be without madness. But mad people are suffering because you have forced such an order over them that their natural instincts are crushed. They have been crippled. It may be that your madmen are more powerful than you. That's why their inner instincts have revolted and they have thrown their conscience, their mind, everything, overboard. That's why they are mad. A better concept of humanity, a better organization, a better discipline with more knowledge and wisdom, may use them. They may prove geniuses. They may prove very talented people, they are, but they have such a force in them that they cannot repress themselves. And society will not allow them to move because they are wild. Freud came to the conclusion that civilization needs the unconscious, the repressed part. But really, for Tantra and Yoga, this unconscious is not the unconscious. It is just between the conscious and the unconscious, a small boundary. It is subconscious. The conscious has forced something down, but the conscious knows about it. It is not really unconscious, you know about it. You may not want to recognize it, you may not want to be attentive to it, because you are afraid that if you give it attention it will come up. You have forced it into darkness, but you are conscious about it. The Freudian unconscious is not really unconscious, it is only subconscious. It is not dark night, It is in the light, you can see it. Tantra talks about the real unconscious which is not suppressed by you, but which is your deepest being. And your conscious is just one part of it which has come into light, the 1/10th part which has seen the light, which has become conscious. 9 parts, 9/10ths, are just hidden underneath. That unconscious is really your source of life energy, of being. Your conscious mind is 1/10th of the whole mind, and this conscious mind has created its own center. That center is the ego. This center is false because it doesn't belong to the whole mind. It is not the center of the whole mind. It is just a center of the conscious part, a fragment. The fragment has created its own center, and that center goes on pretending it is the center of the whole being. No, your total mind has a center. That center is called the guide. That center is in the unconscious, and it will be revealed only when 5 fragments, or half of the mind, come into light. Then the center which is the guide will be revealed. It is hidden in the unconscious, so you need not be afraid of the unconscious. It is the Freudian unconscious you are afraid of. It is something to be afraid of. But this Freudian unconscious can be thrown out in catharsis. Hence my great insistence on catharsis. This Freudian unconscious can be thrown out in catharsis. Whatsoever you wanted to do, and you have not done, do it, meditatively. Don't do it to anyone because that will create a chain of events, and you will not be in control. Just do it in a vacuum. If you are angry, do it in a vacuum. If you feel sexuality, throw it into the sky. If you feel anything, just allow it to move from your inwards outwards. Express it. A meditative catharsis will relieve you of the Freudian unconscious. With the technique that I am teaching, if it is followed, the Freudian unconscious will simply disappear. And only when this Freudian unconscious disappears can you penetrate the real unconscious. It is just in between the conscious and the unconscious. You just go on throwing your rubbish things into a room and you close it. You go on accumulating a junkyard. Freudian unconscious is just a junkyard. Don't throw it in, I say, throw it out. When it moves in, you will become pathological, you can go insane. When it moves out, you will become fresh, young, unburdened. For this age, catharsis is a must. No one can reach the inner guide without catharsis, and once you are in deep catharsis, you need not be afraid. Then the real unconscious will start revealing itself. Then it will penetrate into your conscious, and then for the first time you will become aware of your vast territory. You are not such a small fragment, you have a very vast being, and this vast being has a center. That center is the inner guide. How to differentiate between the unconscious and the inner guide. How to differentiate between the Freudian unconscious and the inner guide. It will be difficult if you don't go through catharsis. But you can feel a difference by and by, because the Freudian unconscious is just a repressed thing. If something appears in you with a violent force, know well that this violent force is coming because you have repressed it in the first place. If something simply appears in you without any violence, just bubbles up silently, easily, without any sounds, even soundlessly, then know that this is the real unconscious. From the guide, something is coming to you. But you will become proficient only when you go through catharsis. Then you will know what is happening. Whenever anything comes from the Freudian unconscious, you will feel disturbed. It will make you uneasy, uncomfortable. And whenever something comes from the guide, you will feel such serenity. You will feel so happy, so at ease, so at home, that you cannot imagine it. You will simply feel that this is the thing. Your total being is in harmony with it. There is no resistance. You know this is the right, this is the good, this is the truth, and nobody can convince you otherwise. With the Freudian unconscious, you can never be serene, you can never be still and calm. You will be disturbed. It is a sort of disease that has come up, and there will be a fight with it. So it is better if you pass through deep catharsis, then the Freudian unconscious will become silent by and by. And just as bubbles come up from a riverbed, come up to the very surface of the water, you will feel bubbles coming up from the very bed of your being. They will come to your conscious mind. But their very coming will give you a deep tranquility, a feeling that nothing can be more right than this. But before it happens, you have to unburden yourself of the Freudian unconscious. And that can happen only if you are in a let-go, because the innermost being is so non-violent that it will not assert itself. The Freudian unconscious will want to assert itself. Every moment, it is trying to assert itself, and you are pushing it back. This is the difference. It wants to assert itself, it wants to become active, it wants to lead you somewhere, It wants to manipulate you and you are resisting it, fighting it. The real unconscious, the guide, is not assertive. If you allow it, if you invite it prayerfully, it will come to you just like an invited guest. You have to be in a let go. Only then will it come, when it feels you are ready, when it feels it will not be denied, rejected, when it feels it will be welcomed, then it will come to you. So, you have to do two things: catharsis for the Freudian unconscious, and training in let go and surrender for the real guide, the real unconscious. These two things done, you will know the difference. The difference really cannot be taught to you, you will know it. When it happens, you will know it. How do you know the difference between when there is pain in your body and when the whole body feels a well-being? When the whole body is filled with well-being, and when your head has a headache, how do you feel what the difference is? You simply know it. You cannot define it. You simply know it. You know what a headache is, and you know what well-being is. The real guide will always give you a feeling of well-being, and the Freudian unconscious will always give you a feeling of headache. It is a turmoil, it is an inner conflict, it is anguish, it is pain suppressed. So whenever it comes, you will feel painful all over. Because of this Freudian unconscious, many things have become painful which are not naturally painful. For example, sex. Because society has repressed sex, it has become painful. One of the most blissful things in natural life is sex, but it has become painful. If you move into sex, you will feel frustrated, you will feel guilty, at the end you will feel weakened, and you will decide never to have sex again. This is not because of natural sex, this is because of the unconscious. Sex has become painful. It has been so repressed that it has become ugly and painful. Otherwise, it is one of the most natural ecstasies. If a child is never taught that sex is bad and a sin, he will enjoy it, and every time he will feel a deep well-being flowing all over the body. Men feel more well-being than women because women are repressed more. No one requires that a boy should be a virgin, but everyone requires, even the boy himself, that the girl he is going to marry should be a virgin. Even playboys require that the girl should be a virgin. Women's unconscious has been repressed more than men's. That's why only a few women achieve orgasm. And that, too, in the West. In the East, not more than 5% of women, at the most, achieve any enjoyment in sex. 95% are simply fed up with it. That's why when sadhus and monks teach that sex is sin, women always agree. They gather in multitudes around monks because the thing appeals to them, it is right. Because they are so suppressed, they have never known any bliss out of it. In India, while making love, women are not supposed to move, be active. They have to lie still like a corpse. If they are active, their man will become suspicious they are enjoying sex, and this is not the sign of a good woman. A good woman is one who doesn't enjoy. In the East, they will say that if you want to marry, marry a good woman, and if you want to enjoy, then have a friendship with a bad woman because only bad women can enjoy. This is unfortunate. The woman is not supposed to move, to be active, she should be just dead. How can she achieve orgasm when the energy is not moving? And if she cannot enjoy it, she is bound to be against the husband, and she is bound to think that the husband is evil. Every day Indian women come to me, and they say that they are fed up with sex, and their husbands are forcing them again and again to have sex. They don't like it, they are disgusted. And why are the husbands not so disgusted? Why are the women disgusted? The reason is that they have a greater repressed unconscious about sex than men. Sex will become painful. If you have suppressed it, it is a headache. Anything can become a headache, just suppress it. That is the trick, it will become a suffering. And anything can become blissful, just express it, don't suppress it. This Freudian unconscious is all that you know right now. You don't know about the real unconscious, the Tantra unconscious. That's why you are afraid. And afraid you cannot let go. Afraid you cannot lose control. You know that if you lose control, immediately the suppressed instincts will take over. Immediately, whatsoever you have repressed will come to the mind, and it will insist on being acted out. That's why you are afraid. Catharsis is needed first so the fear goes, and then you can let go. And if you let go, a very silent force will start flowing to your conscious mind, and you will feel a well-being. You will feel that you are at home. You will feel that everything is good. You will feel that you are blessed. How can one recognize that the inner guide has come into function? This will be the first sign you will start feeling good about yourself. Remember, you always feel bad about yourself. I almost never come across a person who feels good about himself. Everyone is condemning himself, everyone thinks he is bad. And when you think you are bad, how do you suppose that someone else is going to love you? And when no one loves you, you feel frustrated. But you yourself don't love you. You have never touched your hand lovingly. You have never felt your body lovingly. You have never thanked God that He has given you such a beautiful body, such a beautiful organism. No, you just feel disgusted. And the so-called religions have taught you to feel condemned. This body is a bag of sins. You are carrying a burden. When the unconscious is released, you will feel suddenly that you are accepted. You are not bad. Nothing is bad. The whole of life becomes deep down a blessing. You feel blessed. And the moment you feel blessed, all others around you become blessed. You can bless them, you can feel happy. Because you feel condemned, you feel bad about yourself and you think the same about others. How can you love another's body if you condemn your own body? If you are against your own body, how can you love another body? You will condemn deep down, you will condemn. Really, religions have prepared you to become just ghosts. They don't want you to be with the body, they want you to be just unembodied spirits. Everything has been so condemned. And you have taken it for granted. I have seen in many scriptures, that it written that your body has nothing but blood, fat, phlegm just to condemn it. I don't know what these persons who were writing these scriptures wanted. Did they want gold to be there? Why is blood bad? Blood is life. But they have condemned it, and we have accepted the condemnation. They must be mad, insane. Jains always say that their Tirthankaras never urinated, they don't defecate, such bad things. But why is urine bad? What do you want to urinate instead of urine? And what is bad in it? But it is such a bad thing. And psychologists say that because the sex center and the urinating organ are the same in man, sex has become condemned. And in woman the sex center is just in the middle, on one side defecation and on the other side urination. Sex cannot be good if it is between two such bad things. The condemnation of sex has come because we have condemned defecation. But why condemn it? What is bad? But we accept condemnation, and when we accept, then there are problems. Your whole body is condemned by neurotic people. They may have written scriptures, but that doesn't make any difference. They may have been great leaders. Neurotics almost always are. They are great leaders because they are so fanatic that they can immediately get a following. And there are always people who worship fanaticism. Anyone who says something strongly will have people falling at his feet saying he is the right leader. And he may be just neurotic, just mad. These neurotic people have condemned you and you have accepted them. You have been conditioned by them. When the unconscious flows in you, a subtle well-being will come. You will feel good, everything is good, and everything is divine. Your body comes from the divine, your blood also, your urine also. Everything is divine. When the unconscious flows in you, everything is divine, everything becomes spiritual. Nothing is BD, nothing is condemned. This will be the feeling, and then you will fly. You will become so light you cannot walk. Then nothing is a burden on your head. Then you can enjoy small things in a very great way. Then every trivial things becomes a beauty. But that beauty is given by you. Whatsoever you touch becomes golden, because deep down you are so filled with bliss. This will be the first thing that will happen to you, a goodness about yourself. And, when the unconscious starts flowing into your conscious, the second thing will be that you will become less world-oriented, less intellectual, more total. Then if you are happy, you will not just simply say that you are happy, you will dance. Just saying, I'm happy, is pale, meaningless. I see people who say, I am happy, but just look at their faces. I know people who say, I love you, but their body is not expressing anything. Words are dead, but we have substituted them for life. When the unconscious flows in you, this will be the difference. You will live with your total being. When you feel happy, you will dance. Then you will not simply say, I am happy, you will be happy, that's the difference. You will not say, I am happy, there is no need to say it because you will be happy. Then there will be no need to say to someone, I love you, you will be love. Your whole being will show the feeling, you will vibrate with love. Anybody passing nearby will feel that you love. Anyone just touched by your hand will feel a subtle energy has entered into him. There is a warmth in your presence, a happiness. This will be the second thing. First, you will feel a goodness about yourself and about everything. And second, you will become total. When the guide takes you, you will be total. The third question 3, when that intuition starts functioning, is surrender the only technique for that intuition, or the inner guide? Does a person living through intuition always succeed? How do you value success and failure? Is it not true that the person living intuitively will become weak intellectually? Surrender is the only technique for the inner being to become active. Does a person living through intuition always succeed? No, but he is always happy whether he succeeds or not. And a person not living intuitively is always unhappy whether he succeeds or not. Success is not the criterion because success depends on many things. Happiness is the criterion because happiness depends only on you. You may not succeed because others are competitors there. Even if you are working intuitively, others may be working more cunningly, more cleverly, more calculatingly, more violently, more immorally. So success depends on many other things. Success is a social phenomenon. You may not succeed. Who can say that Jesus succeeded? Crucifixion is not a success. It is the greatest failure. A man crucified when he was just 33. What type of success is this? No one knew about him. Just a few villagers, uneducated people, were his disciples. He had no position, no prestige, no power. What type of success is this? Crucifixion cannot be said to be a success. But he was happy. He was totally blissful even when being crucified. And those who were crucifying him would remain alive for many years, but they would remain in misery. So really, who was undergoing crucifixion? That is the point. Those who crucified Jesus, were they undergoing crucifixion, or was Jesus who was crucified? He was happy. How can you crucify happiness? He was ecstatic. How can you crucify ecstasy? You can kill the body, but you cannot kill the soul. Those who crucified him, they lived. But their life was nothing but a long, slow crucifixion, misery and misery and misery. So the first thing is that I don't say that if you follow the inner guide you will always succeed in the sense that the world recognizes success. But in the sense that a Buddha or a Jesus recognizes success, you will succeed. But that success is measured by your happiness. Your bliss, whatsoever happens, is irrelevant. You will be happy. Whether the world says that you have been a failure, or the world makes you a star, a success, it doesn't make any difference. You will be happy whatsoever the case. You will be blissful. Bliss is success to me. If you can understand that bliss is success, then I say you will succeed always. But to you bliss is not success. Success is something else, it may even be misery. Even if you know that it is going to be a misery, you long for success. Ask political leaders, they are in misery. I have not seen any political leader who is happy. They are just miserable, but still they are trying for higher posts, trying to get still higher on the ladder. And those who are already above him are in misery, and he knows it. But we are ready to be miserable if success comes to us. So what is success to us? Success is egoistic fulfillment, not bliss. It is just so that people will say that you have succeeded. You may have lost everything, you may have lost your soul. You may have lost all that innocence that gives bliss. You may have lost all that peace, silence, that brings you nearer to the divine. You may have lost all and become just a madman, but the world will say you are a success. For the world, ego gratification is the success. For me, it is not. For me, to be blissful is success whether anyone knows about you or not. It is irrelevant whether anyone knows about you or not, whether you live totally unknown, unheard of, unnoticed. But if you are blissful, you have succeeded. So remember this distinction because there are many people who would like to be intuitive, who would like to find the inner guide, just to succeed in the world. For them, the inner guide will be a frustration. In the first place, they cannot find it. In the second place, even if they can find it, they will be miserable. Because what they are aiming at is recognition by the world, ego fulfillment, not bliss. Be clear in the mind, don't be success-oriented. Success is the greatest failure in the world, so don't try to succeed, otherwise you will be a failure. Think of being blissful. Every moment think of being more and more blissful. Then the whole world may say you are a failure, but you will not be a failure. You have attained. Buddha was a failure in the eyes of his friends, family, wife, father, teachers, society. He was a failure. He had become just a beggar. What type of success is this? He could have been a great emperor. He had the qualities, he had the personality, he had the mind. He could have been a great emperor, but he became a beggar. He was a failure, obviously. But I say to you, he was not a failure. If he had become an emperor, then he would have been a failure because he would have missed the real life. What he attained under the Bodhi tree was the real, and what he lost was unreal. With the real you will succeed in the inner life. with the unreal. I don't know. If you want to succeed in the unreal, then follow the path of those who are working in cunningness, cleverness, competition, jealousy, violence. Follow their path, the inner guide is not for you. If you want to gain something of the world, then don't listen to the inner guide. But ultimately you will feel that, although you have won the whole world, you have lost yourself. Jesus says, "And what does a man get if he loses his soul and gains the whole world?" Who will you call a success, Alexander the Great or Jesus the Crucified? So, if and that, if has to be understood well if you are interested in the world, then the inner guide is not a guide for you. If you are interested in the inner dimension of being, then the inner guide, and only the inner guide, can help. Chapter 79, Sunyawad, the Philosophy of Emptiness. Suppose your passive form to be an empty room with walls of skin empty. Gracious one, play. The universe is an empty shell wherein your mind frolics infinitely. Sweet-hearted one, meditate on knowing and not knowing, existing and not existing. Then leave both aside that you may be enter space, supportless, eternal, still. These techniques are concerned with emptiness. They are the most delicate, the most subtle. Even to conceive of emptiness seems impossible. Buddha used all these 4 techniques for his disciples and bhikkhus, and because of these 4 techniques he was totally misunderstood. Buddhism got completely uprooted from Indian soil just because of these 4 techniques. Buddha said that there is no God. If there is God, you cannot be totally empty. You may not be there, but the God will be there. The divine will be there. And your mind can deceive you, because your divine may be just your mind playing tricks. Buddha said that there is no soul, because if there is any soul, Atma, you can hide your ego behind it. Your ego will be difficult to leave if you feel that there is some self within you. Then you cannot be totally empty because you will be there. Just to prepare the ground for these techniques of emptiness, Buddha denied everything. He was not an atheist, but he appeared to be an atheist because he said that there is no God. He said there is no soul. He said there is nothing substantial in existence. Existence is empty. But this was just to prepare the ground for these techniques. Once you enter emptiness, you have entered all. You may call it the divine, you may call it God, or Atma, soul, whatsoever you like, but you can enter the truth only when you are totally empty. Nothing should be left of you. Hindus thought that Buddha was destroying religion, that he was teaching irreligion. And people who heard him, even they couldn't follow, because whenever you go somewhere, you go to seek something, you never go to seek emptiness. So those who went to hear him were seeking something, nirvana, moksha, the other world, heaven, truth, but they were seeking something. They had come to gratify their ultimate desire to find the truth. That is the last desire. And unless you are completely desireless, you cannot know the truth. The very condition of knowing is to be totally desireless. So one thing is certain, you cannot desire truth. If you desire it, the very desire will become the barrier. There were masters before Buddha who were teaching, don't desire, be desireless. But they were talking about God, about the kingdom of God, heaven, paradise, moksha, the ultimate freedom and liberation, and they were saying, be desireless. Buddha felt that you cannot be desireless if there is something to be attained. You may pretend that you are desireless, but this pretension, desirelessness, is also from some desire to be fulfilled. It is false. The masters say that you cannot attain to ultimate bliss with desire, and you want to attain ultimate bliss, so you start being desireless. You try to be desireless, so that you can attain the ultimate bliss. But the desire is there. You are trying to be desireless just because of the desire. So Buddha said that there is no God to be attained. Even if you desire, there is no one to be attained, so be desireless. There is no moksha somewhere, there is no goal. Life is meaningless and goalless. His emphasis is beautiful and wonderful. No one has tried that way. He destroyed all the goals just to help you to be desireless. If the goals are there, how can you be desireless? And if you are not desireless, you will not attain to the goal. This is the paradox. He destroyed all the goals, not that those goals are not there. They are there and they can be attained, but if you want to attain them, if you desire to attain them, it becomes impossible. The very basic condition is you must be desireless, then the ultimate happens to you. So Buddha says there is nothing to be desired. Desires are futile. Drop all desires, and when there is no desire, you will be empty. Just imagine, if there is no desire within you, what will you be? You are nothing but a bundle of desires. If all desires go, you simply disappear. Not that you will not exist, you will exist, but as an emptiness. You will be there, just like a vacant room, no one is there, just a sunya, a nothingness. Buddha has called this nothingness anatma, anatta, no soulness. You will not feel any center that I am. There will be just amness, no I to it, because I is nothing but accumulated desires, condensed desires, crystallized desires, many desires have become your I. It is just as in physics. Physicists say that if you analyze matter, then matter is nothing but atoms. There is nothing to join the atoms, each atom is surrounded by vacant space. If you have a rock in your hand, there is no rock, just atoms of energy, and between two atoms, infinite space. Even a rock is spacious, porous. They say that soon we will be able to pull that space out from anything. H.G. Wells has written a story. In the 21st century, a passenger starts calling for coolies in a big station. Other passengers who are traveling in the same compartment with this passenger cannot understand, because he has no luggage, just a packet of cigarettes and a small matchbox. That is all his luggage, and he goes on calling for coolies. A big group gathers and a passenger asked, why are you calling? You don't have anything. You can carry this matchbox and this packet of cigarettes yourself. What are you going to do with these 24 coolies? The passenger laughs and he says, try that matchbox. That matchbox is not ordinary. One railway engine is condensed into it. It is possible soon. Space can be pulled out, and then it can be again forced in, and the engine will take its shape again. Then big things can be carried without much problem. The weight will remain the same, but the shape, the form, will become smaller and smaller. A matchbox can contain a railway engine, but the weight will remain the same, because space has no weight. You can pull out the space, but you cannot pull out the weight. The weight will remain the same because weight is contained by the atoms, not by the space. They say that the whole earth can be condensed into the form, the shape, of one apple, but the weight will remain the same. And if you pull apart all these atoms, if you take one atom out and then another, if you take all the atoms out, nothing will be left behind, so matter is just an appearance. Buddha has analyzed the human mind in a simpler way. He is one of the greatest scientists possible. He says your ego is nothing but desires, atomic desires. There are millions of desires. They make you. If you go on pulling out desires one by one, a moment will come when there is no desire left, you have disappeared. Just space, just vacant space remains. And this, Buddha says, is nirvana. This is the cessation of your being completely. You are no more. And Buddha says this is silence unless you are completely gone. Silence cannot descend on you. Buddha says you cannot be silent because you are the problem. You cannot be peaceful because you are the disease. And you can never be blissful because you are the only barrier. The bliss can come at any moment, but you are the barrier. When you are not, bliss will be there. When you are not, peace will be there. When you are not, silence will be there. When you are not, ecstasy will be there. When your inner being is totally empty, this emptiness itself is bliss. That's why Buddha's teachings are called sunyawad, the philosophy of emptiness, or the philosophy of zero. These 4 techniques are to attain this state of being, or you can call it this state of no-being. There is no difference. You can give it a positive term, as Hindus and Jains have called it, soul, or you can give it a more appropriate but negative term, as Buddha has called it, anatta, no selfness or no soulness. It depends on you. But whatsoever you call it, there is no one to be named and called, there is just infinite space. That's why I say that these are the ultimate techniques, the most delicate, the most difficult, but the most wonderful. And if you can work with any of these 4 techniques, you will gain the unattainable. The first technique: suppose your passive form to be an empty room with walls of skin empty. Suppose your passive form to be an empty room with walls of skin. But inside, everything empty. This is one of the most beautiful techniques. Just sit in a meditative posture, relaxed, alone, your backbone straight and the whole body relaxed, as if the whole body is hanging on the backbone. Then close your eyes. For a few moments go on feeling relaxed, more relaxed, becoming calmer and calmer and calmer. Do this for a few moments, just to be in tune. And then suddenly start feeling your body is just walls of skin and there is nothing inside. There is no one inside. The house is vacant. Sometimes you will feel thoughts passing, clouds of thoughts moving, but don't think that they belong to you. You are not. Just think that they are roaming in a vacant sky. They don't belong to anyone. They don't have any roots. Really, this is the case. Thoughts are just like clouds moving in the sky. They don't have any roots, and they don't belong to the sky. They simply roam in the sky. They come and they go, and the sky remains untouched, uninfluenced. Feel that your body is just walls of skin, and there is no one inside. Thoughts will still continue because of old habit, old momentum, old cooperation. Thoughts will go on coming. But just think that they are rootless clouds moving in space. They don't belong to you. They don't belong to anybody else. There is no one to whom they can belong. You are empty. It will be difficult, but because of the old habits, nothing else. Your mind would like to catch some thought, be identified with it, move with it, enjoy it, indulge in it, resist. Just say there is no one to indulge, there is no one to fight, there is no one to do anything with this thought. Within a few days, a few weeks, thoughts will slow down, they will become less and less. The clouds will start disappearing, or even if they come, there will be great gaps of cloudless sky when there will be no thought. One thought will pass, then another will not come for a period, then another will come, and then there will again be an interval. In those intervals, you will know for the first time what emptiness is, and the very glimpse of it will fill you with such deep bliss you cannot imagine. Really, it is difficult to say anything about it, because whatsoever is said in language will refer to you, and you will not be there. If I say that you will be filled with happiness, it will be nonsense. You will not be there, so how can I say you will be filled with happiness? Happiness will be there. Just within the four walls of your skin, happiness will be there, vibrating, but you will not be there. A deep silence will descend on you, because if you are not, no one can create a disturbance. You always go on thinking that somebody else is disturbing you. The traffic noise on the road, children playing around you, the wife working in the kitchen. Somebody is disturbing you. Nobody is disturbing you. You are the cause of the disturbance. Because you are there, anything can disturb you. If you are not there, then disturbances will come and pass through the emptiness without touching it. You are there, very touchy, a wound. Anything immediately hurts you. I have heard about a scientific story. It happened after the Third World War that all were dead. Now there was no one on the earth, only trees and hills were there. One big tree thought to create a great noise, as it used to create in the past. It fell down from a big rock. It did everything that was possible, but there was no noise. Because for noise your ears are needed, for sound your ears are needed. If you are not there, sound cannot be created. It is impossible. I am speaking here. I am making sound because you are here. If no one is here, I may go on speaking, but sound cannot be created. But I can create it myself because I myself can hear it. If no one is there to hear, sound cannot be created because sound is a reaction of your ears. If no one is there on the earth, the sun will rise, but it cannot create light. It seems absurd. We cannot conceive of it because we always think that the sun will rise and there will be light. Your eyes are needed. Without your eyes, the sun cannot create light. It may go on rising, but it will be futile because the rays will pass in emptiness. There will be no one who can react, and who can say that this is light. Light is a phenomenon of your eyes, you react. Sound is a phenomenon of your ears, you react. What do you think? A rose is there in the garden, but if no one passes, will there be perfume? A rose alone cannot create perfume. Impossible. You and your nose are needed, someone to react and interpret that this is perfume, this is rose perfume. However hard a rose tries, without a nose it will not be a rose at all. The disturbance on the street is not there really, it is within your ego. Your ego reacts and says that this is a disturbance. It is your interpretation. Sometimes in a different mood you may enjoy it, then it will not be a disturbance. You may enjoy it in a different mood, and then you will say, this is beautiful. What music! But in a sad moment even music will become a disturbance. But if you are not there, just space, emptiness, there can be neither disturbance nor music. Things will just pass through you, unnoticed. Because unstruck, there is no one to react, there is no one to respond. Not even an ego will be created. This is what Buddha calls nirvana, and this technique can help you. Suppose your passive form to be an empty room with walls of skin empty. Sit in a passive state, inactive, not doing anything. Because whenever you do something the doer comes in. Really there is no doer. Only because of the doing you imagine that there is one. Buddha is difficult only because of this. Only because of linguistic forms have problems arisen. We say a man is walking. If you analyze this sentence, it means that there is someone who is walking. But Buddha says there is only a process of walking. There is no one who is walking. You are laughing. Because of language, it appears that there is someone who is laughing. Buddha says there is laughter but no one inside who is laughing. When you laugh, remember this and find out who laughs. You will never find anyone. There is simply laughter. There is no one behind it doing it. When you are sad, there is no one who is sad. There is simply sadness. Look at this, simply sadness. It is a process, simply laughter, simply happiness, simply unhappiness. There is no one behind it. Only because of language do we go on thinking in terms of two. If there is movement, we say there must be someone who has moved the mover. We cannot conceive of movement alone. But have you ever seen the mover? Have you ever seen the one who laugh? Buddha says there is life, the process of life, but no one inside who is alive. And then there is death, but no one dying. For Buddha, you are not a duality. The language creates a duality. I am speaking, there is no one who is speaking. It is a process. It belongs to no one. But for us this is difficult because our mind is deeply rooted in dualism. Whenever we think of some activity, we conceive of some actor inside, some doer. That's why a passive, inactive form is good in meditation, because then you can fall into emptiness more easily. Buddha says, don't meditate, be in meditation. The difference is vast. I will repeat. Buddha says, don't meditate, be in meditation. Because if you meditate, the doer has come in, you will go on thinking that you are meditating. Then meditation has become an act. Buddha says, be in meditation. That means be totally passive, don't do anything, and don't think that there is any doer. That's why sometimes, when the doer is lost in the doing, you feel a sudden upsurge of happiness. It comes because you have become one. With a dancer, a moment comes when dance takes over, the dancer disappears, then happens a sudden blessing, a sudden beatitude, a sudden ecstasy. He is filled with unknown bliss. What has happened? Only the doing remained and the doer was no more. At the war front, soldiers sometimes attain to very deep bliss. It is difficult to conceive of because they are so near death. At any moment they can die. In the beginning it makes them afraid. They tremble in fear. But you cannot continue trembling and fearing every day, continuously. One becomes accustomed. One accepts death, then the fear disappears. And when death is so near and with any wrong movement you may be dead immediately, the doer is forgotten, and only duty remains, only doing remains. And one has to be so deeply in the doing that one cannot go on remembering that I am will create trouble. You will miss. You will not be totally in the activity. And life is at stake, so you cannot afford duality. Action becomes total. When action is total, you suddenly feel you are happy as you have never been before. Warriors have known very deep springs of joy that ordinary life cannot give to you. That may be the reason why war is so appealing. And that may be the reason why Kshatriyas, warriors, have attained to moksha more than Brahmins. Because Brahmins are always thinking and thinking much mental activity. 24 Jain Tirthankaras, Ram, Krishna, Buddha, were all Kshatriyas, warriors. They have attained to the highest peak. No businessman has ever been heard to attain to that peak. He lives in such security that he can afford to be dual. Whatsoever he is doing, it is never total. Profit cannot be a total activity. You can enjoy it, but it is never a life and death problem. You can play with it, but nothing is at stake. It is a game. A business is playing a game, the game of money. The game is not very dangerous, so businessmen almost always remain mediocre. Even a gambler may attain to higher peaks of bliss than a businessman, because a gambler moves into danger. He stakes everything that he has got in that moment of total stake. The doer is lost. That may be the reason why gambling is so appealing, war is so appealing. As far as I understand, behind whatsoever is appealing, there must be some ecstasy lurking somewhere, some hint of the unknown somewhere, some glimpse of the deep mystery of life hidden somewhere there. Otherwise nothing can be appealing. Passivity. Any posture that you take in meditation should be passive. In India, we have evolved the most passive asana, the most passive posture, that is Siddhasana. And the beauty of it is that in this Siddhasana posture, as Buddha sits, the body is in the deepest of passive states. Even while lying down you are not so passive. Even while sleeping, your posture is not so passive, it is active. Why is a Siddhasana so passive? For many reasons. In this posture the body is locked, closed. The body has an electric circle. When the circle is closed and locked, the electricity moves round and round inside the body. It does not leak out. Now, it is a proved scientific phenomenon that in certain postures your body leaks energy. When the body is leaking energy, it has to create energy continuously. It is active. The body dynamo has to work continuously because you are leaking. When energy is leaking from the outside body, the inside body has to be active to replace it. So the most passive state will be when no energy is leaking. Now in Western countries, particularly in England, they treat patients just by making a circle of their body electricity. In May hospitals, these techniques are being used and they are very helpful. A person lies on the floor on a net of wires. The net of wires is just to make a circle of his body electricity. Just half an hour is enough, and he will feel so relaxed, so filled with energy, so strong, that he cannot believe that when he came he was so weak. In all the old cultures, people used to sleep in a particular direction in the night, just so that energy didn't leak out because the earth has a magnetic force. To use that magnetic force you have to lie in a particular direction, then the force in the earth will magnetize you the whole night. If you are lying opposite to it, the force is fighting with you and your energy will be destroyed. Many people in the morning feel very depressed, very weakened. This should not be so, because sleep is meant to rejuvenate you, to give you more energy. But there are many people who are energetic when they go to bed, but in the morning they are just dead. There can be many reasons for it, but this may be one: they are lying in the wrong direction. If they are lying against the earth magnet, they will feel dissipated. So now scientists say that the body has an electric circuit which can be locked, and they have studied many yogas sitting in siddhasana. In that state, the body is leaking the minimum energy. Energy is preserved. When energy is preserved, the inner batteries need not work, there is no need for any activity, so the body is passive. In this passivity, you can become more empty than if you are active. In this siddhasana posture, your backbone is straight, and the whole body is also straight. Now many studies have been done. When your body is straight, totally straight, you are least influenced by the gravitation of the earth. That's why if you sit in a posture which is inconvenient, which you call inconvenient, the inconvenience is caused because your body is affected by more gravitation. If you are sitting straight, then gravitation is least effective, because it can pull only your backbone, nothing else. That's why it is difficult to sleep while standing. It is almost impossible to sleep while standing in a shirshasana, on your head. For sleep you have to lie down. Why? Because then the earth has the maximum pull on you, and the maximum pull makes you unconscious. For sleep you have to lie down on the ground, so the earth's gravitation touches the whole of your body and pulls every cell of it. Then you become unconscious. Animals are more unconscious than man because they cannot stand erect. Evolutionists say that man could evolve because he could stand erect, on 2 feet. The gravitation pull is less. Because of that, he could become a little more aware. In siddhasana, the gravitational pull is at its minimum. The body is inactive and passive, closed inside. It has become a world unto itself. Nothing is moving out, nothing is coming in. Eyes are closed, hands are locked, feet are locked. Energy moves in a circle. And whenever energy moves in a circle, it creates an inner rhythm, an inner music. The more you hear that music, the more you feel relaxed. Suppose your passive form to be an empty room, just like an empty room with walls of skin, empty. Go on dropping into that emptiness. A moment will come sometime when you feel everything has disappeared. That there is no one, nobody, the house is vacant, the lord of the house has disappeared, evaporated. In that gap, in that interval, when you are not present inside, the divine will be present. When you are not, God is. When you are not, bliss is. So try to disappear. Try to disappear from within. The second technique, gracious one, play. The universe is an empty shell wherein your mind frolics infinitely. Gracious one, play. The universe is an empty shell wherein your mind frolics infinitely. This second technique is based on the dimension of play. That has to be understood. If you are inactive, it is good to fall into deep emptiness, into the inner abyss. But you cannot be empty the whole day, and you cannot be passive the whole day. You will have to do something. Activity is a basic requirement, otherwise you cannot be alive. Life means activity, so you can be inactive for a few hours, but for 24 hours you will have to be active. And meditation should be something which becomes your style of life. It should not be a fragment. Otherwise you will gain it and lose it. If you are inactive 1 hour, then for 23 hours you will be active. The active forces will be more, and they will destroy whatsoever you attain in your inactivity. The active forces will destroy it. And the next day you will again do the same for 23 hours. You will accumulate the doer, and in 1 hour you will have to drop it. It will be difficult. So your mind must change its attitude about work and activity. Hence the second technique. Work should be considered as play, not as work. Work should be considered as play, just a game. You should not be serious about it. You should be just like children playing. It is meaningless, nothing is to be achieved. Just the very activity is enjoyed. You can feel the distinction if you play sometimes. When you work, it is different. You are serious, burdened, responsible, worried, anxious, because the result, the end result, is the motive. The work itself is not worth enjoying. The real thing is just in the future, in the result. In play, there is no result, really. The very process is blissful, and you are not worried. It is not a serious thing. Even if you look serious, it is just pretending. In play, you enjoy the very process. In work, the process is not being enjoyed. The goal, the end, is important. The process has to be tolerated anyhow. It has to be done because the end has to be achieved. If you could achieve the end without this, you would drop activity and jump to the end. But in play, you would not do that. If you could achieve the end without playing, then the end would be futile. It has meaning only through the process. For example, two football teams are on the playing ground. Just by throwing a coin, they can decide who will win and who will be defeated. Why go through so much effort, unnecessarily exerting yourself? The thing can be decided very easily just by tossing a coin. The end will be there. One team can win, another can be defeated. Why work for it? But then there will be no meaning, no significance. The end is not meaningful, the very process is the meaning. Even if no one wins and no one is defeated, the game was worth it. The activity in itself is enjoyed. This dimension of play has to be applied to your whole life, whatsoever you are doing. Be there in that activity so totally that the end is irrelevant. It may come, it has to come, but it is not on your mind. You are playing, you are enjoying. That's what Krishna means when he tells Arjuna to leave the future in the hands of the divine. The result of your activity is in the hands of the divine. You simply do. This simply doing becomes a play. That's what Arjuna finds difficult to understand, because he says that if it is just play, then why kill, why fight? He understands what work is, but he cannot understand what play is. And Krishna's whole life is just a play. You cannot find such a non-serious man anywhere. His whole life is just a play, a game, a drama. He is enjoying everything, but he is not serious about it. He is enjoying it intensely, but he is not worried about the result. What happens is irrelevant. It is difficult for Arjuna to understand Krishna because he calculates, he thinks in terms of the end result. He says in the beginning of the Gita, "This whole thing seems to be absurd. On both sides, my friends and my relatives are standing to fight. Whosoever wins, it will be a loss, because my family, my relatives, my friends will be destroyed. Even if I win, it will not be worth anything, because to whom am I going to show my victory? Victories are meaningful because friends, relatives, family will enjoy them. But there will be no one. The victory will be just over dead bodies. Who will appreciate it? Who will say, 'Arjuna, you have done a great deed, so whether I am victorious or I am defeated, it seems absurd.' The whole thing is nonsense. He wants to renounce. He is deadly serious, and anyone who calculates will be that deadly serious. The setting of the Gita is unique. War is the most serious affair. You cannot be playful about it, because lives are involved, millions of lives are involved. You cannot be playful. And Krishna insists that even there you have to be playful. You don't think about what will happen in the end, you just be here and now. You just be a warrior playing. Don't get worried about the result, because the result is in the hands of the divine. And it is not even the point if the result is in the hands of the divine or not. The point is that it should not be in your hands. You should not carry it. If you carry it, then your life cannot become meditative. This second technique says, "Gracious one, play. Let your whole life be just a play." The universe is an empty shell wherein your mind frolics infinitely. Your mind goes on playing infinitely. The whole thing is just like a dream in an empty room. While meditating, one has to look at the mind just frolicking, just like children playing, jumping out of overflowing energy. That's all. Thoughts jumping, frolicking, just a play. Don't be serious about them. Even if a bad thought is there, don't feel guilty. Or, if there is a very great thought, a very good thought that you want to serve humanity and transform the whole world, and you want to bring heaven onto earth, don't get too much ego through it. Don't feel that you have become great. This is just a frolicking mind. Sometimes it goes down. Sometimes it comes up. It is just overflowing energy, taking many shapes and forms. Mind is just an overflowing spring, nothing else. Be playful, Shiva says, gracious one, play. The attitude of the player means he is enjoying the activity, it is good in itself. No profit motive is involved. He is not calculative, just look at a businessman. Whatsoever he is doing, he is calculating about the profit, what he is going to attain out of it. A customer comes. The customer is not a person, he is just a means. What can be profited out of him? How can he be exploited? Deep down he is calculating what is to be said, what is to be done. Everything is calculated just to manipulate, just to exploit. He is not concerned with this person, he is not concerned with the deal. He is not concerned with anything, he is concerned only with the future, the profit. Look at the East colon in the villages still. A businessman is not just a profit maker, and the customer has not come just to purchase something. They enjoy it. I remember my old grandfather. He was a cloth merchant, and I and my whole family was puzzled because he enjoyed it so much. For hours together it was a game with the customers. If something was worth 10 rupees, he would ask 50 rupees for it, and he knew this was absurd. And his customers knew it too. They knew that it must be near about 10 rupees, and they will start from 2 rupees. Then a long haggling would follow hours together. My father and my uncles would get angry. What is going on? Why don't you simply say what the price is? But he had his own customers. When they came, they would ask, where is Dada? Where is grandfather? Because with him it is a game, a play. Whether we lose 1 rupee or 2, whether it is more or less, that is not the point, they enjoyed it. The very activity in itself was something worth pursuing. 2 persons were communicating through it. 2 persons were playing a game, and both knew it was a game because of course a fixed price was possible. In the West now, they have fixed prices because people are more calculating and more profit motivated. They cannot conceive of wasting time. Why waste time? The thing can be settled within minutes. There is no need, you can just write the exact price. Why fight for hours together? But then the game is lost and the whole thing becomes a routine. Even machines can do it. The businessman is not needed. The customer is not needed. I have heard about a psychoanalyst who was such a busy man and who had so many patients that it was difficult to have personal contact with everyone. So he would feed his tape recorder for a particular patient, and the tape recorder would say whatsoever that psychoanalyst wanted to say to the patient. Once it happened that it was the appointed time of a patient who was a very rich man. The psychoanalyst was entering a hotel. Suddenly he saw the patient sitting there. So he asked, "What are you doing here? It was your time with me." The patient said, "I am so busy that I have fed my words to my own tape recorder. Both the tape recorders are talking to each other. Whatsoever you have to say to me, my tape recorder has recorded, and whatsoever I have to say to you, your tape recorder has recorded it from my tape recorder. This same time, and we are both free." If you are too calculating, then persons disappear, and more mechanization comes in. Even now in villages in India, the haggling goes on. It is a game and worth enjoying, you are playing. It is a match between 2 intelligences, and 2 persons come in deep contact. But it is not time-saving. Games can never be time-saving. And in games you don't worry about the time, you are carefree, and whatsoever is going on, you enjoy it right in that moment. Being playful is one of the deepest bases of all meditative processes. But we are businesslike. We are trained for it. So even when we meditate, we are looking for the end, for the result. And whatsoever happens, you will be unsatisfied. People come to me and they say, yes, meditation is growing, progressing. I'm feeling more happy, a little more silent, at ease, but nothing else is happening. What nothing else? I know that people like this are bound to come someday and say, yes, I am feeling nirvana, but nothing else is happening. I am blissful, but nothing else is happening. What nothing else? He is looking for some profit, and unless some very visible profit comes into his hands, something which he can deposit in a bank, he cannot be satisfied. Silence and happiness are so vague, you cannot possess them, you cannot show them to anyone. Every day it happens that people come to me, and they say that they are sad. They are expecting something which should not be expected even in businesses, and they are expecting in their meditations. The business mind comes into meditation with the whole training of business, what profit can be made out of it. The businessman is not playful. And if you are not playful, you cannot be meditative. Be more and more playful. Waste time in play. Just playing with children will do. Even if there is no one, you can jump and dance alone in the room and be playful. Enjoy. But your mind will go on insisting, what are you doing? Wasting time. You can earn something out of this time. You can do something, and you are just jumping, singing, and dancing. What are you doing? Have you gone mad? Try it. Snatch whatsoever time you can get out of your business and be playful. Whatsoever. You can paint, you can play on a sitar, anything you like, but be playful. Look for no profit out of it, see no future in it, just the present, and then you can be playful inside also. Then you can jump on your thoughts, play with them, throw them here and there, dance with them, but not be serious about them. Many people are just unconscious as far as their mind is concerned. Whatsoever happens in their mind, they are unconscious about it. They are drifting in it without knowing where the mind leads them. If you can be aware of any track of the mind, you will be puzzled at what is happening. Mind moves through associations. A dog barks on the street. The bark comes to your head, and now you have started. You may move to the very end of the world through this barking of the dog. You may remember some friend who had a dog. Then this dog is dropped, and that friend has come into the mind, and he had a beautiful wife, and the wife was beautiful. And now you are moving. You can go to the very end of this world, and you will never remember that just a dog played a trick on you. It just barked and put you on the track, and you started to move. You will feel very awkward at what scientists say about this. They say that this track is fixed in your mind. If the same dog in the same situation barks again, you will follow this track again, the friend, the dog, the wife, the beautiful wife, you will go the same way again. Now they have tried many experiments with electrodes in the human brain. They touch a particular spot in the brain, and then a particular memory is released. Suddenly, you see that you are 5 years old, playing in a garden, running after a butterfly. Then the whole sequence is there, you feel pleasant. Everything is nice, the air, the garden, the smell, everything comes alive. It is not simply memory, you relive it. Then the electrode is pulled out and the memory stops. If the electrode again touches the same spot, again the same memory comes again. It is just as if you are remembering something mechanical, and it always starts from a certain beginning and ends at a particular end. And then starts from the beginning. Just as you record something on a tape recorder, your brain has millions of memories, millions of cells recording, and it is all mechanical. These experiments on the human brain are very strange and very revealing. Memories can be revived again and again, again and again. One experimenter tried 300 times, and the memory was the same it was recorded. The person on whom the experiment was done became aware, and he felt that it was very, very weird because he was not the master. He could not do anything. When the electrode touched the place, the memory started and he had to see it. During 300 times, he by and by became a witness. He started seeing the memory, but then he became aware that he was different, and this memory was different. This experiment can be helpful, very helpful, for meditators, because when you know your mind is nothing but a mechanical recording around you, you are separate. This mind can be touched. Now scientists say that sooner or later we will cut all the centers which give you anguish, anxiety, because again and again the same thing is touched, and the whole thing has to be relived. I have been trying many experiments with many disciples. Do the same thing and they move in the same vicious circle, again and again, unless they become a witness that this is a mechanical thing. You are aware that if you say the same thing to your wife each week, the same thing, she will react. After 7 days, when she has forgotten, say the same thing, she will react. Then record the reaction is going to be the same. You know, your wife knows, a pattern becomes fixed and it goes on. Even a dog can start your pattern just by barking, something is touched, an electrode has entered. You have started on a journey. If you are playful in life, then you can be playful inside with the mind also. Then be as if you are watching something on a TV screen, you are not involved. You are just a spectator, an onlooker. Look and enjoy it. Don't say good, don't say bad, don't condemn, don't appreciate, because these are serious things. If a naked woman comes onto your screen, don't say that this is bad, that some devil is playing a trick on you. No devil is there to play a trick upon you. Look at it as if it is just on the screen, a film screen, and be playful about it. Say to the lady, wait. Don't try to push her out, because the more you push her out, the more she will come in. Ladies are difficult, and don't follow her. If you follow, then you will be in trouble. Don't follow, don't fight, this is the rule. Just look and be playful. Just say a hello or good morning. Just look and don't be disturbed at all. Let the lady wait, she will go by herself. As she came, she moves on her own. She is not related to you, she is just something in the memory, struck by some situation she came there, just a picture. Be playful with it. If you can be playful with your mind, it will drop very soon, because mind can be there only if you are serious. Seriousness is the link, the bridge. Gracious one, play. The universe is an empty shell wherein your mind frolics infinitely. The third technique, sweet-hearted one. Meditate on knowing and not knowing, existing and not existing. Then leave both aside that you may be. Meditate on knowing and not knowing, existing and no existing. Meditate on the positive aspect of life, and then on the negative. Then put both aside because you are neither. Then leave both aside that you may be. Look at it this way. Meditate on a birth. A child is born, you are born. Then you grow, you become young. Meditate on this whole growth. Then you become old, then you die. From the very beginning, imagine the very moment when your father and mother conceived you, and into the womb of the mother you came. Just the first cell. From there look to the very end, where your body is burning on a funeral pyre and all your relatives are standing around you. Then put both aside, the one who was born and the one who has died. Just put both aside and then look within. There you are, that which is never born and which is never going to die. Knowing and not knowing, existing and not existing. Then leave both aside that you may be. You can do it with any positive negative polarity. You are sitting here. I look at you. I know you. When I close my eyes, you are no longer there. I don't know you. Then put aside both the knowledge that I have known and the knowledge that I don't know. You will be empty. Because when you put both knowledge and no knowledge aside, you will be empty. There are two types of people. Some are filled with knowledge and some are filled with ignorance. There are people who say, we know. Their ego is bound up with their knowledge. And there are people who say, we are ignorant. They are filled with their ignorance. They say, we are ignorant. We don't know. One is identified with knowledge, the other is identified with ignorance, but both possess something, both cherish something. Push both aside, knowing and not knowing, so that you are neither ignorant nor knowing. Put aside both positive and negative. Then who are you? Suddenly the who will be revealed to you. You will become aware of the beyond, that which transcends. Putting aside both positive and negative, you will be empty, you will be no one, neither wise nor ignorant. Put both hate and love aside, put both friendship and enmity aside. When both the polarities are put aside, you are empty. But this is a trick of the mind. It can put one aside, but never the two together. It can put one aside. You can put ignorance aside, then you cling to knowledge. You can put pain aside, but then you cling to pleasure. You can put enemies aside, but then you cling to friends. And there are a few people who do just the verse. They will be put friends aside and cling to the enemies. They will put love aside and cling to hate. They will put wealth aside and cling to poverty. And they put knowledge, scriptures, aside and cling to ignorance. These people are great renouncers. Whatsoever you cling to, they put it aside and cling to the opposite, but they cling all the same. Clinging is the problem. Because if you cling, you cannot be empty. Don't cling. This is the message of this technique. Just don't cling to anything positive or negative, because with non-clinging you will find yourself. You are there, but because of the clinging, you are hidden. With non-clinging you will be exposed, you will be uncovered, you will explode. The fourth technique, enter space, supportless, eternal, still. Enter space, supportless, eternal, still. 3 qualities of space have been given in this technique. Supportless, there can be no support in space. Eternal, it can never end. Still, it will be soundless, it will be silent. Enter this space, it is within you. But the mind always asks for support. People come to me, and if I say to them, just sit silently, with closed eyes, and don't do anything, they say, give me some avalamban, some support. Give me some mantra as a support, because I cannot sit. Just sitting is difficult. If I give them a mantra, it is okay. They can go on repeating the mantra. Then it is easy. With support you are never empty, that's why it is easy. Something must go on, you must be doing something. Doing, the doer remains doing, you are filled. You may be filled with Omkar, Aum, Ram, Jesus, Ave Maria, anything. You may be filled with anything, but you are filled. Then you are okay. Mind resists emptiness. It wants always to be filled by something else, because if it is filled it can be. If it is not filled it will disappear. In emptiness you will attain no mind. That's why mind asks for support. If you want to enter inner space, don't ask for support. Drop all supports, mantras, gods, scriptures, whatsoever gives you a support. If you feel you are supported, drop it and just move inside supportless. It will be fearful. You will feel scared. You are moving to where you can be lost completely. You may not be able to come back because all supports will be lost. Your contact with the bank is lost, and where this river will lead you, no one knows. Your support is lost, you may fall into an infinite abyss. Hence, fear grips you, and you ask for some support. Even if it is a false support, you enjoy it. Even a false support is helpful. Because for the mind it makes no difference whether a support is real or false, it must be a support. That's the point. You are not alone, something is there and supporting you. It happened once that a man came to me. He was living in a house where he felt there were spirits and ghosts, and he was very worried. Through worries, he started seeing more illusions. Through worries, he became ill, weak. His wife said, "If you live any longer in this house, I am leaving." His children were sent to some relative's house. The man came to me and he said, "It has become very difficult now. I see them clearly, they walk in the night. The whole house is filled with spirits, you help me." So I gave him one of my pictures and said, "Take it. Now I will tackle those spirits. You simply sleep silently, you need not worry. Really, I will tackle them, I will see to them. Now it is my business, and don't interfere, now you need not be concerned." The man came the next day. He said, "I slept, it was so beautiful, you have done a miracle." And I had not done anything but give a support. Through support the mind was filled. It was no longer vacant. Someone was there. In ordinary life you are leaning on many false supports, but they help. And unless you become strong enough, you will need them. That's why I say that this is the ultimate technique, no support. Buddha was dying and Anand asked him, "Now you are leaving us, what shall we do? How shall we attain? How shall we proceed now? When the master is gone, we will be wandering in darkness for many lives. No one is there to lead us, to guide us, the light is going out." So Buddha said, "It will be good for you. When I am no more, you become your own light. Move alone, don't ask for any support, because support is the last barrier," and it happened. Anand had not become enlightened. For 40 years he was with Buddha, he was the closest disciple, he was just like a shadow to Buddha, moving with him, living with him. He had had the longest contact with him. For 40 years Buddha's compassion was falling over him, reigning over him for 40 years. But nothing happened. Anand remained as ignorant as ever, and the day after Buddha died, Anand became enlightened the next day, the very next day. The very support had been the barrier. When there was no more Buddha, Anand could not find any support. It is difficult. If you live with a Buddha, and the Buddha goes, then no one can be a support to you. Now no one will be worth clinging to. One who has been clinging to a Buddha cannot cling to anybody else in this world. This whole world will be vacant. Once you have known a Buddha and his love and compassion, then no love, no compassion can compare. Once you have tasted that, nothing else is worth tasting. So Anand was alone for the first time in 40 years, totally alone. There was no way to find a support. He had known the highest support. Now lower supports would not do. The next day he became enlightened. He must have moved into the inner space, supportless, eternal, still. So remember, don't try to find any support, be supportless. If you are trying to do this technique, then be supportless. That is what Krishnamurti is teaching, be supportless. Don't cling to a master, don't cling to a scripture, don't cling to anything. That is what every master has been doing. A master's whole effort is first to attract you towards him, so that you start clinging to him. When you start clinging to him, when you become close and intimate with him, then he knows that the clinging must be cut. And you cannot cling to anyone else now, that is finished. You cannot move to anyone else, that is impossible. Then he cuts the clinging and suddenly you are left supportless. It will be miserable in the beginning. You will cry and you will weep and you will scream, and the whole being will feel that you are lost. Into the very deepest depth of misery you will fall. But from there one arises alone, supportless. Enter space, supportless, eternal still. That space has no beginning, no end, and that space is absolutely soundless. There is nothing, not even a sound vibrating, not even a ripple. Everything is still. That point is just within you, any moment you can enter it. If you have the courage to be supportless, this very moment you can enter it. The door is open. The invitation is for all and everyone. But courage is needed. Courage to be alone, courage to be empty, courage to dissolve and melt, courage to die. And if you can die within to your inner space, you will attain to the life which never dies. You will attain to Amrit, to immortality. Chapter 80. All and nothing mean the same. The first question when you said that really there is no one inside us. There is only a void, an emptiness. But then why do you often call it the being, the center being or non-being? Nothing or all, they look contradictory, but they both mean the same. All and nothing mean the same. In dictionaries they are opposites, but in life they are not. Nobody understands. Look at it in this way: if I say that I love all, or if I say that I love no one, it means the same. If I love someone, then only is there a difference. If I love all, it means the same as loving no one. There is no difference then. The difference is always in degrees, relative. And these are both two extremes. They have no degrees. The total and the zero have no degrees. So you can call the total a zero, or you can call a zero the total. That's why some enlightened persons have called the inner space emptiness, sunya, the void, nothingness, non-being, anatma, and some have called it the inner being, the absolute being, the Brahma, Atma, the Supreme Self. These are the two ways to describe it. One is positive, the other is negative. Either you have to include all or have to exclude all. You cannot describe it with any term which is relative. An absolute term is needed. Both the contradictory poles are absolute terms. But there have been some enlightened persons who have remained totally silent. They have not called it anything, because whatsoever you call it, whether you call it being or non-being, the moment you give it a name, a term, a word, you have erred, because it includes both. For example, if you say, God is alive or God is life, it is meaningless, because then who will be death? He includes all. He must have death in him as completely as life, otherwise to whom will death belong? And if death belongs to someone else and life belongs to God, then there are two gods, and then there will be many problems which cannot be solved. God must be both life and death. God must be both the creator and the destroyer. If you say God is the creator, then who is the destroyer? If you say God is good, then who will be evil? Because of this difficulty, Christians, Zoroastrians, and many other religions have created a devil side by side with God, because to whom will the evil belong? They have created a devil. But nothing is solved. The problem is only pushed one step back, because then it can be relevantly asked, who has created the devil? If God himself creates the devil, then he is responsible. And if the devil is something independent, not related to God, then he himself becomes a god, a supreme power. And if God has not created the devil, how can God destroy him? It is impossible. Theologians go on giving some answers to a question, but that answer again creates more questions. God created Adam, then Adam became evil. He was expelled. He disobeyed God, and he was expelled from the heavenly world. It has been asked again and again, and relevantly, why did Adam become evil? The possibility must have been created by God in him, the possibility to be evil, to go wrong, to disobey. If there was no possibility, no inherent tendency, then how could Adam go wrong? God must have created the tendency. And if the tendency for evil was there, another thing is also certain: the tendency to overcome, it was not so strong. The tendency to fight, it was not so strong. The evil tendency was stronger. Who created this strength? No one except God can be responsible. Then the whole thing seems to be a hoax. God creates Adam, he creates an evil tendency in him, a strong evil tendency which he cannot control. Then he goes wrong. Then he is punished. God should be punished, not Adam. Or you have to accept that some other force exists side by side with God. And that other force must be stronger than God, because the evil can tempt Adam and God cannot protect him. The devil can provoke and seduce and God cannot protect. The devil seems to be a stronger God. There is a church, recently born in America, called the Church of Satan, the Church of the Devil. They have a high priest, just like the Pope of the Vatican. And they say that history proves that the real God is the devil. And they look logical. They say, your God, the God of good, has always been defeated, and the devil has always been the victorious. The whole of history proves it. So why worship a weak God who cannot protect you? It is better to follow a strong God who can seduce you but who can protect you also, because he is stronger. The Church of the Devil is now a growing church. and they seem logical. This is what history proves. This duality to save God from the negative pole creates problems. In India, we have not created the other pole. We say God is both the creator and the destroyer, the good and the bad. This is difficult to conceive of because the moment we say God, we cannot conceive of him being bad. But in India, we have tried to penetrate the deepest mystery of existence, that is, oneness. Somehow, good and bad, life and death, negative and positive, meet somewhere, and that meeting point is existence, oneness. What will you call that meeting point? Either you will have to use a positive term, or a negative one, because we don't have any other terms. If you use positive terms, then you call it being with a capital B God, absolute, Brahma. Or if you want to use S negative term, then you call it nirvana, nothingness, sunya, non-being, anatma. Both indicate the same. It is both, and your inner being is also both. That is why sometimes I call it being, and sometimes I call it non-being. It is both. It depends on you. If the positive appeals to you, then call it being. If the negative appeals to you, then call it non-being. It depends on you. Whatsoever feels good, whatsoever you feel will give you maturity, growth, evolution, call it that. There are two types of persons, one who cannot feel any affinity with negativity, and the other who cannot feel any affinity with the positive. Buddha is the negative type. He cannot feel affinity with the positive, he feels affinity with the negative. He uses all negative terms. Shankara doesn't feel affinity with the negative. He talks about the ultimate reality in positive terms. Both say the same thing. Buddha calls it sunya, and Shankara calls it Brahma. Buddha calls it the void, nothing, and Shankara calls it the absolute, the all. But they are saying exactly the same thing. Ramanuja, one of Shankara's greatest critics, says that Shankara is just a hidden Buddhist. He is not a Hindu, he only appears to be because he uses positive terms. That is all the difference there is. Wherever Buddha says nothing, he says Brahma, all else is the same. Ramanuja says that Shankara is the great destroyer of Hinduism because he has brought Buddhism in from the back door by just using a trick wherever a negative term is used. He uses a positive term, that's all. He calls him a Prachanna Buddha, a crypto-Buddhist, and he is right in a way because there is no difference. The message is the same. So it depends on you. If you feel an affinity with silence, nothingness, then call that great being emptiness. If you don't feel an affinity, if you feel afraid, then call that emptiness the great being. But then your techniques will be different. If you feel scared with emptiness, aloneness, nothingness, then the 4 techniques I talked about last night will not be of much use to you. Forget them. There are other methods about which I have been talking. Use positive techniques. But if you are ready and have the courage to be supportless, to move into emptiness, alone, ready to cease completely, then these 4 techniques will help you tremendously. It depends on you. The second question, question 2, if there is absolute emptiness inside an enlightened one, then how is it that he seems to be making decisions, discriminating, liking this or disliking that, saying yes or no? This will really look a paradox. If an enlightened one is simply emptiness, then for us it becomes a paradox. Then why does he say yes or no? Why does HT choose? Why does he like some things and dislike other things? Why does he talk? Why does he walk? Why does he live at all? For us this is a problem. But for the enlightened one it is not a problem. Everything is done out of emptiness. The enlightened one is not choosing. It looks like choice to us, but the enlightened one simply moves in one direction. That direction comes from the emptiness itself. It is just like this, you are walking. Suddenly a car comes in front of you and you feel that an accident will happen. You don't decide what to do. You decide. How can you decide? There is no time. A decision will take time. You will have to ponder and think, weigh up the pros and cons, decide whether to jump this way or that. You don't decide. You simply jump. From where does that jump come? Between the jump and you there is no thinking process. Suddenly you become aware that the car is in front of you and you jump. The jump happens first. Then later on you can think. In that moment you jump through hastiness. Your whole being jumps without any decision. Remember, decision is always of the part. It can never be of the whole. Decision means that there was a conflict. One part of your being was saying, do this. Another part was saying, don't do this. That's why the decision was needed. You had to decide, argue, and one part had to be pushed aside. That's what decision means. When your totality is there, there is no need to decide. There is no alternative. An enlightened one is total within himself, total emptiness. So whatsoever comes out, it comes out of his totality, not out of any decision. If he says yes, it is not a choice, there was no no to be chosen, there was no alternative. Yes is the response of his total being. If he says no, then no is the response of his total being. That's why an enlightened man can never repent. You will repent always. Whatsoever you do, it makes no difference whatsoever you do, you will repent. If you want to marry a woman, if you decide yes, you will repent. If you decide no, you will repent. Because whatsoever you decide is a partial decision, the other part is always against. If you decide, yes, I will marry this woman, one part of your being is saying, don't do this, you will repent. You are not total when difficulties arise. They are bound to arise because when two different persons start living together, difficulties are bound to arise. There will be conflicts, there will be a struggle to dominate, there will be power politics. Then the other part will say, look. What did I say? I was insisting that you shouldn't do this, and you have done it. But that doesn't mean that if you had followed the other part, there would have been no repentance. No, the repentance would have been there, because then you would have married some other woman, and the conflict and the struggle would have happened. Then the other part would go on saying, I was saying marry the first woman. You have missed an opportunity. A heaven is lost, and you are married to a hell. You will repent, whatsoever the case, because your decision cannot be total. It is always against a part, and that part will take revenge. So whatsoever you decide, if you do good you will repent, if you do bad you will repent. If you do good, then your mind, the other part, will go on saying that you have missed an opportunity. If you do bad, then you will feel guilty. An enlightened being never repents. Really, he never looks backwards. There is nothing to look backwards at. Whatsoever is done with his totality. So the first thing to be understood is that he never chooses. The choice happens to his emptiness. He never decides. That doesn't mean that he is indecisive. He is absolutely decisive, but he never decides. Try to understand me. The decision happens in his emptiness. This is how his whole being acts. There is nothing more to it. If you are walking and a snake crosses your path, you jump suddenly, that's all. You don't decide. You don't consult a master and a guide. You don't go to look into books in the library about what to do when a snake crosses the path, how to do it, what the technique is. You simply jump. And remember, that jump is coming from your total being. It has not been a decision. Your total being has acted that way. That is all. There is nothing more to it. To you, it seems as if an enlightened one is choosing, deciding, discriminating, because you are doing that every moment. And you cannot understand something which you have not known at all. An enlightened one happens to be doing things without any decision, without any effort, without any choice. He is choiceless. But that doesn't mean that if you give him food and stones, he will start eating stones. He will eat the food. To you, it will look as if he has decided not to eat the stones, but he has not decided. That is simply foolish. It doesn't occur to him. He eats the food. This is not a decision. Only an idiot person would decide whether to eat stones or food. Stupid minds decide. Enlightened minds simply act, and the more mediocre the mind, the more effort has to be made for a decision. That's what worry means. What is worry? There are two alternatives and no way to decide between them, and the mind goes on. One moment this side, another moment that side. This is what worry is. Worry means you have to decide and you are trying to decide, but you cannot decide. So you are worrying, puzzled, moving in vicious circles. An enlightened one is never worried. He is total. Try to understand this. He is not divided, he is not split, there are not two beings in him. But in you there is a crowd, not only two. There are many, many persons living in you, many voices, just a crowd. An enlightened one is a deep unity, he is a universe. You are a multiverse. This word universe is beautiful. It means one uni. You are a multiverse, there are many worlds in you. The second thing to be understood is that whatsoever you do, before doing it, there is thinking, thought. Whatsoever an enlightened person is doing, there is no thinking, no thought. He is doing it. Remember, thinking is needed because you have no eyes to see. Thinking is a substitute. It is just like a blind man groping his way on a path with a stick. A blind man can ask people who have eyes how they grope, what type of sticks they use to grope their way on the path, and they will simply laugh. They will say that they don't need sticks, they have eyes. They simply see where the door is, they need not grope for it, and they never think about where the door is. They see and they pass through it. But a blind man cannot believe that you can simply pass through a door. First you will have to think about where the door is. First you will have to inquire. If someone is there, you will have to ask where the door is. And even if the direction is given, you will have to grope for it with your stick, and then too there may be many pitfalls. But when you have eyes, if you want to go out, you simply look. You don't think about where the door is, you don't decide. You simply look, the door is there, you pass through it. You never think that this is a door, you simply use it and you act. The same is the situation with unenlightened minds and enlightened minds. An enlightened mind simply looks. Everything is clear, he has a clarity. His whole being is light. He looks around and he simply moves. Acts, he never thinks. You have to think because you don't have eyes. Only blind men think. They have to think because they don't have eyes. They need substitute eyes, and thinking provides that. I never say that Buddha or Mahavira or Jesus are great thinkers. That would be just nonsense. They are not thinkers at all. They are knowers, not thinkers. They have eyes, they can see, and through their seeing they act. Whatsoever comes out of a Buddha comes out of emptiness, not out of a mind filled with thoughts. It has come out of an empty sky. It is the response of emptiness. But for us it is difficult because nothing comes to us in that way. We have to think about it. If someone asks a question, you have to think about it. And even then, you can never be certain that whatsoever you are saying is the answer. A Buddha answers. He doesn't think. You question him, and the emptiness simply responds. That response is not a thought-over thing. It is a total response. His being behaves that way. That's why you cannot ask for consistency from a Buddha. You cannot. Thought can be consistent. A thinker is bound to be consistent, but an enlightened person cannot be consistent, because each moment the situation changes. And each moment things come out of his emptiness. He cannot force. He cannot think. He does not really remember what he said yesterday. Every question creates a new answer, and every question creates a new response. It depends on the questioner. Buddha enters a village. One man asks, "Is there God?" Buddha says, "No." In the afternoon, another man asks, "Is there God?" Buddha says, "Yes." Then in the evening, a third one asks, "Is there God?" Buddha remains silent. In just one day, in the morning, no. In the afternoon, yes. In the evening, silence, neither yes nor no. Buddha's disciple, Anand, became puzzled. He had heard all three answers. In the night when everyone had retired, he asked Buddha, "Can I ask you a question? Just in one day you have answered one question in three ways, not only differently, contradictorily. My mind is puzzled. I cannot sleep if you don't answer. What do you mean? In the morning you say yes, in the afternoon no, in the evening you remain silent, and the question was the same." Buddha said, "But the questioners were different. And how can different questioners ask the same question? This is really beautiful, very deep." He said, "How can different questioners ask the same question? Question comes out of a being, it is a growth. If the being is different, how can the question be the same?" In the morning when I said yes, the man who was asking was an atheist. He had come to get my confirmation that there is no God, and I could not confirm his atheism, because he was suffering because of it, and because I could not be a part in his suffering, and I wanted to help him. I said, "Yes, God exists." That's how I tried to destroy his so-called atheism. In the afternoon, when the other person was there, he was a theist, and he was suffering through his theism. I couldn't say yes to him because that would have been a confirmation which he had come for. Then he would go and say, "Yes, whatsoever I was saying is right. Even Buddha says so, and the man was wrong. I could not help a wrong man in his wrongness, so I had to say no to destroy whatsoever he is, to shatter his mind. And the man who came in the evening was neither. He was a simple, innocent man, and he was not asking for any confirmation. He had no ideology. He was really a religious person, so I had to be silent. I said to him, "Be silent about this question. Don't think about it." If I had said yes, it would have been wrong because he was not there to find a theology. If I had said no, it would have been wrong, because he was not to be confirmed in any atheism. He was not interested in thoughts, in ideas, in theories, doctrines, no. He was a real religious man. How can I utter any word before him? I had to be silent. He understood my silence. When he went away, his religiousness had deepened. Buddha said, "Three persons cannot ask the same question. They can formulate it in a similar way, that is another thing. The questions were all, does God exist? Their formulation was the same, but the being from where the question was coming was totally different. They meant different things by it. Their values were different. Their associations with words were different. I remember, once it happened that Mullah Nasruddin came back to his house one evening. The whole day he had been involved in a football match. He was a fan. In the evening when he entered the house, his wife was reading a newspaper, and she said, "Look, Nasruddin, there is something for you. It is reported here that a man has given his wife in return for a season ticket for the football matches. You are also a fan, a mad fan. But I cannot conceive that you would do the same. Or would you, could you exchange me just to get a season ticket for the football matches?" Nasruddin thought hard, and then he said, "Of course I would not, because it is ridiculous and criminal. The season is half over. Every mind has its own orientation. You may use the same words, but because you are different, those same words cannot be the same." Then Buddha said another thing, and that is even more significant. He said, "Anand, why are you disturbed? You were not a party. You should not listen, because not a single answer was given to you. You should remain indifferent, otherwise you will go mad. Don't move with me, because I will be involved with many, many types of persons. And if you listen to everything that is not said to you, you will get confused and crazy. You just leave me. Otherwise remember to listen only when I speak to you. At other times don't listen. Whatsoever I say is not your business. It was not said to you, and it was not your question at all. So why should you be worried you were not related?" Someone asked, someone else replied, "Why are you unnecessarily worried about it? If you have the same question, ask, and then I will answer. But remember, my answers are not to the questions but to the questioners." I respond, "I look at the man, I see through the man becomes transparent, and this is my response. The question is irrelevant. The questioner is relevant. You cannot ask for consistency from an enlightened person. Only unenlightened, ignorant persons can be consistent, because they don't have to look. They just follow some ideas. They carry dead ideas, consistently. For their whole life they will carry something and they will remain consistent to it. They are stupid, that's why they can remain consistent. They are not alive, they are dead. Aliveness cannot be consistent. That doesn't mean that it is wrong. Aliveness is consistent, but very deeply, not on the surface. Buddha is consistent in all the three answers, but his consistency is not in the answers. His consistency is in his effort to help. He wanted to help the first man. He wanted to help the second man. He wanted to help the third man. For all three, compassion was there, love was there. He wanted to help them. That is his consistency. But it is a deep current. His words are different, his answers are different, but his compassion is the same. So when an enlightened person speaks, answers, that answer is a total response of his emptiness, of his being. He echoes you, he reflected you, he is a mirror. He has no face of his own. Your face is mirrored in his heart. So if an idiot comes to meet a Buddha, he will meet an idiot. Buddha is just a mirror. And that man will go and spread the rumor that Buddha is an idiot. He has seen himself in Buddha. If someone sensitive, understanding, mature, grown-up comes, he will see something else in Buddha. He will see his own face. There is no other way. You go on seeing mirrors in persons who are totally empty. Then whatsoever you carry is your interpretation. It is said in old scriptures that when you reach an enlightened person, remain totally silent. Don't think, otherwise you will miss the opportunity of meeting him. Just remain silent. Don't think. Absorb him, but don't try to understand him through your head. Absorb him, drink him, allow your total being to be open to him, let him move within you, but don't think about him, because if you think, then your mind will be echoed. Let your total being be bathed in his presence. Only then will you have a glimpse of what type of being, of what type of phenomenon you have come in contact with. Many came to Buddha. They came and went. They carried their own opinions, and they went out and they spread them. Very few, really very few, understood, and that is how it should be, because you can understand only according to you. If you are ready to melt and change and be transformed, only then can you understand what an enlightened person, what an enlightened being is. The third question, question 3, you said that noise and disturbances are not outside in the world, but are because of your own minds and ego. But why do the saints and mystics always live in unnoisy, uncrowded places? Because they are still not saints and mystics. They are still endeavoring, still working. They are seekers, not siddhas. They have not reached. Noise will disturb them, the crowd will disturb them. The crowd will pull them back to its own level. They are still weak, they need protection, they are still not confident, they cannot move into temptation. They have to protect themselves in the lonely solitude where they can grow and become strong. When they are strong, there will be no problem. Mahavir moved into the wilderness. For 12 years he was alone, silent, not talking, not moving in villages or cities. Then he became enlightened. Then he came back to the world. Buddha was in total silence for 6 years. Then he came back to the world. Jesus or Mohammed, or anyone when they are growing, they need protected conditions. When they have grown, then there is no problem. So if you find a mystic afraid of moving in a crowd, then know well that he is still a child, growing. Otherwise, why should a mystic be afraid of moving in crowds? Nothing can be done to him by the crowd, by the noise, by the world, by the objects of the world. With all this madness around him, nothing can be done to him. He cannot be touched. He can move and he can live anywhere it happens for his emptiness to live, he can live. But in the beginning, it is good to be alone, to be in a harmonious, natural surrounding. So remember, don't think that because you live in a noisy Bombay you are a mystic, or you have grown up and have become a siddha. If you want to grow, you will also have to move sometimes, for some definite periods, into loneliness out of the crowd, out of the concerns of the world, relations of the world, objects of the world into such a place where you can be alone and not disturbed by others. As you are now, you can be disturbed, but once you have the strength, once you have the inner power, once you are crystallized and you know that now no one can shatter your inner center, you can move anywhere. Then the whole world is lonely. Then wherever you are is wilderness. Then the space of silence moves with you because you are the creator of it. Then around you, you create your own inner silence, and wherever you move, you are in silence. No one can penetrate that silence. No noise can disturb it. But unless the crystallization has happened, don't believe that you will not be disturbed. You are disturbed, whether you know it or don't know it. Really, you are so disturbed that you cannot know it. You have become accustomed to disturbance. Every nerve is on edge. You are continuously disturbed. Right now, you don't feel the disturbance. To feel the disturbance, sometimes you need to be not disturbed. Only then can you feel it in contrast. You are continuously disturbed, but you have become accustomed to it, habituated to it. You think this is how life is. It would be good if you move into the Himalayas for some time. It would be good to go into some remote village, a remote forest, and be alone for a few days' silence, as if the whole of humanity has disappeared. Then come back to Bombay. Then you will know what disturbance you have been living in. You will be suddenly disturbed. Now you have a contrast. You had an inner music, now it is shattered. For seekers, solitariness is good. For siddhas, it is irrelevant, and there are two types of wrong people. With the first type, if you say to them that it is they who are disturbed, the situation is irrelevant, then they will never go into solitariness to have a glimpse of what silence is. Then they will remain here and they will say, nothing disturbs us. It is us really, not the surrounding, so we remain here. And they are disturbed, but their theory will become a rationalization. Then there are other people, the other type of wrong people, who, if you tell them to move into silence, to solitude, because it will help, they will move but then they will never come back. Then it becomes an addiction and they will remain weak forever. They will always feel afraid of coming back to the world. Then their solitariness has not been a help. Rather, it has become a hindrance. They are not stronger through it, they have become weaker. Now they cannot move in the world. Both these types are wrong. Be the third type, which is the right type. In the beginning, know well that you are disturbed by circumstances. So sometimes manage to move out of them. Then when you are out of them, whatsoever silence you attain, bring it back to your circumstances and try to preserve it. If you can preserve it in the circumstances, then only will the theory have become an experience. Then you know that nothing disturbs. Then you know it is you ultimately who are disturbed or not disturbed. But make it an experience just as a theory, it is useless. The fourth question for it is one thing to realize cosmic consciousness on earth and transcend body. But how do realized ones know for sure that this consciousness is eternal and will remain after the death of the body? The first thing is they don't bother about it. They are not worried about whether it will remain or not. It is you who are worried. They don't think of the next moment. The next life is just irrelevant. Even the next day, the next moment, is not a point of concern. It is you who always ask about something in the future, something of the future. Why? Because your present is just empty. Your present is just nothing. Your present is just rotten. Your present is such a suffering that you can tolerate it only if you go on thinking of the future and the paradise and the life ahead. Just here now there is no life, so you pitch your mind into the future just to escape from the present, the ugly present. One who is realized is here and now, totally alive. All that can happen has happened. There is no future to it. Whether death is going to kill him or not is not a concern at all. It is the same. Whether he disappears or remains, it makes no difference. This moment is so rich, so absolutely rich, this moment is so intense that his whole being is here and now. Anand asked Buddha again and again, "What will happen to you when your body dies?" And Buddha insisted again and again, "Anand, why are you so concerned about the future? Why don't you look at me, at what is happening now?" But again, after a few days, he will ask, "What happens to an enlightened one when his body dies?" He is afraid about himself. He is afraid. He knows that when the body dies, there is no possibility of reviving it, there is no possibility of remaining, there is no possibility of being, and he has not attained anything. The light will just go out, it has been a futile thing. If that happens without his attaining anything, he will simply disappear. So the whole thing was meaningless. The whole suffering was meaningless, leading nowhere. He was concerned. He wanted to know if something survives after the body, but Buddha says, "I am here and now. What will happen in the future is not a concern at all." So the first thing is that a realized one is not bothered. That is one of the signs of a realized one, he is not bothered by the future. And the second thing you asked, how does he know for sure? Knowledge is always sure. Certainty is inherent, intrinsic to knowledge. You have a headache. Can I ask you, how can you say for sure that you have a headache? You will say, "I know, I can ask, but how are you sure that your knowledge is right and not wrong?" But no one asks such nonsensical questions. When the headache is there, it is there, you know it. Knowledge is intrinsically certain. When one is enlightened, he knows he is enlightened. He knows that he is not this body. He knows that inside he is just a vast space. And space cannot die. Things can die, space cannot die. Just think about this room. We can destroy this building, this woodlands, but we cannot destroy the roominess in this room. Can you destroy it? The walls can be destroyed, but we are sitting here in this roominess space. The walls can be destroyed, but how can you destroy this room, not the walls, the space here? The whole of woodlands may disappear, it will disappear one day, but this space will remain. Your body will disappear, and because you don't know the inner space, you are afraid, you want to know it for sure. But an enlightened man knows that he is the space, not the body, not the walls, but the inner space. The walls will drop, they have dropped many times, but the inner space will remain. It is something he has to find proofs for, it is his immediate knowledge. He knows it, that's all. Knowledge is intrinsically certain. If your knowledge is uncertain, then remember it is not knowledge. People come to me and they say, "Our meditation is going very well. We are feeling very happy." And then suddenly they ask me, "What do you say about it? Is our happiness really there? Are we really happy?" They ask me. They are not certain about their happiness. What type of knowledge is this? They are simply pretending. But they cannot deceive themselves. They are thinking, they are hoping, they are wishing, but they are not happy. Otherwise, what is the need to ask me? I will never go to ask anybody whether I'm happy or not. Why should I? If I am happy, I am happy. If I am not, I am not. Who else can give proof of it? If I cannot be a witness, who will be a witness for me, and how can the other be a witness? So sometimes I play games. Sometimes I say, "Yes, you are happy. You are absolutely happy," and they become more happy just by hearing me. And sometimes I say, "No, you don't show anything. There is no indication, you are not happy. You must have been dreaming." And they drop, their happiness disappears, they become sad. What type of happiness is this? Just by saying that you are happy, it increases. And just by saying that you are not, it disappears. They are just trying to be happy, but they are not. This is not knowledge, this is just wish fulfillment, they hope, and they think they can deceive themselves. By thinking that they are happy, believing that they are happy, finding some proof, finding some certificate from somewhere that they are happy, they think that they will create happiness. It is not so easy. When something happens in the inner world, you know it has happened. You don't need any certificate, you don't need one. The very search for someone to approve is childish. It shows that you long for happiness, but you have not attained it, you don't know it. It has not happened to you. one who has realized is always certain. And when I say certain, sure, absolutely sure, I don't mean that he feels some uncertainty somewhere, and against that uncertainty he feels certain no. He is simply certain. There is no question of uncertainty, I am alive. Am I certain about it, sure about it, there is no question. There is no question of certainty. It is absolutely certain, it does not have to be decided, I am alive. Socrates was dying and someone asked him, Socrates, you are dying so easily, so happily. What is the matter, are you not afraid? Are you not scared? Socrates said a very beautiful thing. He said, only two things are possible after I am dead, either I will be or I will not be. If I am not, then there is no question. No one is there to know it, to know that I am not. The whole thing simply disappears. And if I am there, then there is no question I am. Only two are the possibilities, either I will be, or I will not be, and both are okay. If I am, then the whole thing continues. If I am not, then there is no one to know, so why be worried? He is not an enlightened one, but he is a very wise man. Remember, this is the difference between a wise one and an enlightened one. A wise one thinks deeply, penetrates intellectually into everything, and comes to a conclusion. He is a very wise man. He says that there are two alternatives. Logically, he penetrates into the phenomenon of death. Only two are the possibilities, either I simply disappear, I am no more, or I will remain. Is there any third alternative? There is no third alternative. So Socrates says, I have thought about both. If I remain, then there is no question to be worried about. If I am no more, there is no one to worry, so why be worried now? I will see what happens. He is not in the know. He doesn't know what is going to happen, but he has thought about it wisely. He is not a Buddha, he is the keenest intellectual possible. But if you can become wise, not enlightened, because enlightenment is neither wisdom nor ignorance, the duality has been transcended. Even if you can become wise, you will feel relaxed. Even if you can become wise, you can feel very contented. But wisdom is not the goal of Tantra or yoga. Tantra and yoga aim for the superhuman, the point where wisdom and ignorance are both transcended, where one simply knows and does not think, where one simply looks and is aware. The last question, question 5, I certainly want to become enlightened. But if I do, what difference does it make for the rest of the world? But why are you worried about the rest of the world? Let the world worry about itself. And you are not worried about what will happen to the rest of the world if you remain ignorant. If you are ignorant, what happens to the rest of the world? You create misery. Not that you knowingly do it. You are misery, so whatsoever you do, you sow seeds of misery all around. Your hopes are meaningless. Your being is significant. You may think you are helping others, you hinder them. You may think you love others, you may be simply killing them and murdering them. You may think you are teaching others, but you may be simply helping them to remain ignorant forever, because what you hope, what you think, what you wish, is not significant. What you are is significant. Every day I see people around who are loving to each other, but they are killing each other. They think they are loving, and they think they are living for the other, and without them the life of their family, their beloveds, their children, their wives, their husbands, will be miserable, but it is miserable with them. And they try in every way, but whatsoever they do, it goes wrong. It is bound to be so because they are wrong. Doing is not of much importance. The being from where it comes, originates, is. If you are ignorant, you are helping the world to become a hell. It is already. This is what has happened through you. Wherever you touch, you will create hell. If you become enlightened, whatsoever you do, or you need not do anything, just your being, your presence will help others to flower, to be happy, to be blissful. But that should not be your concern. The first thing is how to be enlightened. You ask me, I want to be enlightened. But that wanting seems to be very impotent because immediately you say but. Whenever but comes in, it shows the desire is impotent. But what will happen to the world? Who are you? What do you think about yourself? Does the world depend on you? Are you running it? Managing it? Are you responsible? Why give so much importance to yourself? I feel so important. This feeling is part of the ego, and this worrying about others will never allow you to move to a peak of realization, because that peak is achieved only when you drop all worries. And you are so efficient in accumulating worries that you are simply wonderful. Not only your own, you go on accumulating others' worries as if yours are not enough. You go on thinking about others, and what can you do? You can only get more and more worried and mad. I was reading a viceroy's journal, Lord Wavell's journal. The man seems to be very sincere, deeply honest, because some remarks he makes are just superb. One remark he makes in a journal is, unless these three old men, Gandhi, Jinnah, and Churchill, die, India will be in trouble. These three men, Gandhi, Jinnah, Churchill, and these three were helping in every way. Churchill's own viceroy writes in a journal that these three men should die soon, and he hopefully even gives their ages: Gandhi, 75, Jinnah, 65, Churchill, 68. Because these three are the problems. Can you think of Gandhi imagining that he is the problem, or Jinnah, or Churchill all are doing their best to solve the problem of this country? And Wavell said that these three are the problem, because all the three are adamant, stubborn. Every one of these three has the absolute truth and the other two are absolutely wrong. These three absolutes cannot meet anywhere the other two are simply wrong. There is no question about it. Everyone thinks as if he is the center, and he has to worry about the whole world, and change the whole world, transform the whole world, create a utopia. All that you can do is just change yourself. You cannot change the world. You can create more mischief trying to change it. You can create more chaos. You can harm. And you can puzzle. Already the world is too puzzled. You can puzzle it more and confuse it more.